this is the president. Hello, this is the president of the United States. Who is this? Is it you again?
Look behind you.
This is my private line. How did you get through?
They're everywhere. All the time. We see them every day. But you have to look behind you.
There is nothing behind me. How did you get this number?
The spaceman told me.
What spaceman?
It doesn't matter. I'm telling you about monsters. Please, you must look behind you.
Young lady, there are no monsters in the Oval Office.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Heard on nearly 300 stations across the country. We also have a lot of radio stations that do the service of providing a stream on the internet and TalkStream Live. If any station out there has a stream that plays the full 3 hours of this program, we certainly have a list for you at TalkStreamLive.com. Go to TalkStreamLive.com and just click on the Clyde Lewis icon, and then you'll be able to see all those stations so you can get the full show in its entirety. No worries. Don't have to worry about preemption from sports games or anything else. We certainly have the show available for you online. Also, we have it on the telephone, 701-801-3900, the number to call. You can dial that number to listen to the show on your phone or podcast by phone at 857-252-1086. You can dial that number to listen to the last 5 podcasts on your phone. SoundCloud.com is available too. All you got to do is just go to SoundCloud.com and you'll be able to pick out Ground Zero shows that date all the way back to 2012 when we first kicked off our national broadcast here with the Premier Radio Network. We're so glad to be a part of the network, and we're so glad to be out there for you every night, Monday through Friday, from 7 p.m. Pacific time till midnight Pacific time. That's a long time to be on a radio show, but we do our best here at Ground Zero, and we're glad for everyone out there that listens to the program. So I've been holding off on all these really scary shows. I had a few scary ones last week. It's the ones that really scared me. I had a lot of people, commenting. We were at the Ground Zero Lounge over the weekend, and it's where I go to a local bar and speak, just like I used to in the old days, go from bar to bar, town to town, and do my thing, and hopefully, people will want to respond, and they did. I had a great time at the Ground Zero Lounge over the weekend. Also, I binged watched all of Stranger Things. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but we're probably going to do some shows regarding Stranger Things, or at least the theme around Stranger Things, which, of course, is based on, believe it or not, even though the characters and everything else and Hawkins and everything is all fictional, what goes on in Stranger Things is based on some truth. And so we're going to dig through that and show you that as well. We always do. Stranger Things is a great show, and we recommend if you have Netflix. Good reason to get Netflix is that. I'm still debating on whether or not I'm trying to think of the best shows that I've seen that are well written and good, and it's a toss up between Stranger Things and The Walking Dead for the second spot. Always Breaking Bad number 1. I just don't know about I just loved Breaking Bad. But Stranger Things is right up there with The Walking Dead is one of my favorite TV series, and I don't know, it's going through, and House of Cards. I like that one, even though Kevin Spacey is now on the rocks because of some things that he said or that he admitted to or that was admitted to. I don't know what's going on with that, and I'm sure there's more ugliness to be unraveling from Hollywood. The predator nature of Hollywood, the robbing of innocence, if that's what you want to call it, when young kids or teenagers are being exploited by actors and directors, and this whole secretive pedophile predator cycle is alive and well in Washington and in Hollywood. And when you're talking about something that is out there robbing the innocence of young people, you can compare it to that of a demon. You can compare it to that of a vampire or incubus, succubus, or I don't know. I mean, mythical vampires seem to capture the attention and generate interest like few other topics can, and I know that. Everybody, they tend to think, well, when you hear vampire, it's all a myth. Well, yeah, of course, Hollywood has turned it into a myth. Hollywood has made vampires like shiny people who are misunderstood. It used to be, revenant creatures who suck blood or drink blood from humans. I mean, it's all based in some reality. And when you're looking at vampiric figures, they've been present across diverse cultures for thousands of years. This goes way beyond Vlad Tepes of Wallachia. In fact, it goes beyond that. And everybody seems to think that Dracula, of course, Dracula's based on Vlad Tepes, the guy from Transylvania or from Romania. Well, vampire, though, when you're looking at vampires, and I'm talking about, both metaphor and reality, and people say, well, there are no real vampires. Well, there are real vampires. I'm going to show you they're real vampires. I'm going to tell you that they're real vampires. Vampires, they're just a curious figure. And they lurk in the curious space between life and death. And it's been widely believed on different continents and across various cultures that at death, when you die, souls hovered about their dead bodies for 3 days. There's that number again, 3 days. In some places, that time span was considerably lengthened, and the vulnerable body needed to be watched. And the reason why it needed to be watched is because it was there to protect it from ghouls that roam the cemeteries looking for jewelry or looking for other bone fragments or things that they could have from departed loved ones. But it was mostly because they figured that evil spirits hovered around the dead bodies and that they would enter in and try to animate the corpse. And this was a vampire, not necessarily a zombie, a vampire or a lich. Another word that I don't think many people are familiar with, a lich, which is something I think is pretty new for some people. I mean, I talked about a lich a long time ago, and I really didn't go into detail about it, but a lich is kind of like a vampire, and it's kind of like a zombie. It's basically a spellcaster. It's a magician or some sort of an alchemist that has increased their lifespan by magic, and literally they become undead. And so they're like this, why don't they die? Well, it's because they have become a lich. They've somehow magically become this undead creature. And then as it gets older, it gets more cynical and more malevolent. And just the process of becoming a lich, or the process of like shedding the skin. I mean, in death, when you're looking at mythological vampires and mythological liches, we had alchemists who had great power, and they turned themselves into liches. And so when you saw this walking alchemist, he looked more skeletal. And the process, like I said, was painful. And those who are able to become a lich, they willingly become a lich. I mean, they're totally immune to any sort of mental attack, any poisons, diseases. I mean, it's, what was it? Just the idea of a human that lasts forever because of magic. a human that has casted a spell upon itself, that literally mummifies itself to stay alive and to appear to those who are unlucky enough to see. But once again, it's another character that occupies that space between life and death. Messengers, Mortgeist, those who stay there at the gates, either they're there to willingly show you the light, or they want to escort you to the darkness. It's like the ferryman across the river of Styx. I mean, I've said before that when you're looking at, I guess you would call them pre-scientific beliefs. The alchemists wrote about these pre-scientific beliefs, and the friars, and everyone. And I've talked about these characters as I've been digging deeper into these old grimoires. And I said, well, you look at the 17th century, 16th century, 15th century, and the death process. The popularized figure of the vampire has particular traits that's different from a lich, more of a revenant creature. And there are now a generated idea of highly desirable traits of a vampire, which is bizarre. I mean, Twilight and Lestat, highly desirable traits of a vampire, a very good-looking, misunderstood creature. But then again, we have the repulsive revenant, more repulsive of mere humans, the blood drinker, the cannibal, the robber, the thief of innocence. And the spirit of the vampire is very real, as you have been watching the mainstream lately, hearing about people like Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby and others who are not necessarily bloodsuckers, but they certainly are taking away the innocence, or at least the souls, in some attack that makes them a predatory creature, much like vampire. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. And usually when you bring up the vampire in conversation, there's a snicker factor involved. I don't know why, and maybe I do know why. It's because over time, the vampire's been watered down as some misunderstood figure that we're supposed to accept in society, or, it's always been, whittled down to something that is about as believable as Santa Claus. But there is a curiosity, and there have been books, serious books written on the subject that are not modern. Okay, this is not some modern thing. I mean, we look at alchemists of the 17th century looked at vampirism as part of the death process, or the idea that it can be popularized and built up to be something that would be a figure that stands between life and death. I mean, vampire mythologies have been generated to water down reality of the subculture that lurks in places of power. Even though vampires are weakened by the light, they certainly have power when they hide in the darkness, and they hide in plain sight. We're arriving at what is called the dark time of the year. And vampires see this time as their time. We may be concerned with the Halloween season, but the times of transformation have a special name for vampires. Now, what I'm about to tell you, not very many people know, because people don't really take the time to look deep into occult matters. But when we're dealing with the very real nature of the darkness, the very real nature of evil, the personification of that which could be a shapeshifter, and the idea of a multiverse. You see, quantum mechanics tells us that there's a multiverse. What that multiverse does is it basically guarantees us that there are things out there that sometimes get caught in the net of the matrix. They enter in, and once they get in, there are people everywhere that experience some sort of encounter. Now, one holiday that is coming that vampires love, not Halloween, no. It's called Imkeperu. 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 Now, I don't think many people understand what Imkeperu is, but Imkeperu is a very real holiday. It denotes the holy day for vampires. Now, it runs concurrent with the pagan festival of Samhain. Now, I've never understood how Samhain is Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain, not Samhain, although many people know what Samhain is. If I were to say Samhain, everyone goes, oh, yeah, I know what Samhain is. It's something evil, Samhain. But it's actually called Samhain. There's Samhain. And then what it is the Imkeperu runs concurrent with Samhain, and then there is a rite of the Imsekemu. These are true the Imsekuru is the dark lord of vampires, Imsekuru. And then when they do this rite, it's a bleeding rite, and in a festival form, Imkeperu ushers in the dark side of the year. It's a time when the powers of the vampire wax greatly and their senses of who they are heighten significantly. Now, isn't it interesting how, for the longest time, and I don't know, I've heard rumors that this is going to change. Have you ever noticed how around this time of year, they want to make the day darker by turning the clocks back 1 hour? You notice that? It's like, it seems to get dark earlier when they throw the clocks back an hour, and it's almost as if, and it happens around the time of Halloween. Now, I always wondered why, and it's because of the farmers, Clyde. Yeah, I know. But see, we don't live really in a farmer's world anymore. And I don't know if daylight savings time or mountain time or standard time or, whatever they call it. They do different time zones, mountain, central, eastern, Pacific. And when they flip, and I think Arizona doesn't do it. I think they keep their time the same everywhere there in Arizona. But everywhere else, they send the clocks back an hour, which makes everything darker. And it's as if there's this secret conspiracy to throw the clocks back. And when I realized that Imkeperu was a holiday for vampires that runs congruent with Samhain, which runs congruent with setting the clocks back an hour, I'm beginning to wonder why, other than the farmer explanation, is why they do this. Oh, yeah, because they want to save power, or they want... I think they have all these ideas, but think about it. Why make the darkness darker unless there's a real scary reason for doing it, I think? Because, we don't need to set the clocks back. We don't need to set the clocks ahead. We don't need to lose an hour. We don't need to gain an hour. We just need to keep the time the same. But see, no, we want to make it darker earlier in the night, in the day, in the evening. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to have the sun go down at 4:30 at night or 4:30 in the afternoon, but it does. At 5 o'clock, everything's dark. Rush hour at night, it's dark. It's all dark. Now, why? Does it have anything to do with pagan congruency? Does it have anything to do with the pagan festivals of Samhain and Imkeperu, where the rite of Imsekemu is performed when the hour is darker? Ushering the dark side of the year, a time when the powers of the vampire the powers of the vampire are increased, and the heightened awareness is increased. The veil is thinnest at that time. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. Tonight, the real vampire story, one that is not being clouded or watered down by Hollywood. And in fact, when I talked about Im Keperu, I had somebody write me and say, wow, where did you get that? And there's actually something they were telling me, it's called the Keperu mantra. And they're saying that it's some special mantra that is said. But it's not, okay, it's not pronounced Keper, they're telling me. It's called Kefer. So it's Im Keperu, not Keperu. Keheperu, it's Kefer. Pronounced Keperu. So some people do know this. And I'm wondering about, Im Keperu, the Im Keperu mantra. It's spelled Kheperu. Wow, I get educated by people out there that know better. It's Kefer, Keferu. It's fascinating. I'm still trying to find out more about this, but once again, and matter of fact, for those of you that are asking, I did post, and I may have to post it again, the link to all of these books they're ebooks, okay? So they're free to everybody. It's like a library online of all these occult books. And I've stumbled upon these old books that talk about real vampires. Okay, this isn't like some mythology. This is where priests and friars and alchemists were talking about werewolves and vampires, the personality of the vampire, the Im Keperu. Amazing. Im Keperu. That it's a holy day for vampires. It's concurrent with what goes on with Samhain, or what most people mispronounce as Samhain. And then there's Im Sekimyu, which is a lord of the darkness. Im Sekimyu is the lord of the darkness. So as a festival, Im Keperu ushers in the dark side of the year. And that's where the powers of the vampire arrive. It can also be seen as the day of double power. Now, it's a day where the vampire is poised on the threshold of many things. The energies of these holy days thin the veil between the living and the dead. Now, in the ancient writings of the alchemists, there's this very important connection between the vampire and the Nephilim. Now, for those of you that know anything about the Nephilim, if you believe the word of the Bible, and this is the thing that's interesting, is that people who like to say that vampires are myths, you need to check out your Bibles here, because there's something I found in the writings of the Vampire Codex that I read, and it just blew me away about vampires. First of all, there is a very important connection between the vampire and the Nephilim. If you believe the word of the Bible and the history of the Old Testament, there's small mention in the 6th chapter of Genesis of these gigantic titans called the Nephilim. And what the Nephilim were is they had fallen from the grace of God, and they are the key to tracking the history of the rise of the vampires. Now, these are the giant vampires. These are the men that made the other men of Canaan look like locusts, made them look smaller, like bugs, because these were giant vampiric creatures that would eat children and eat women. And you talk about the tales of the affairs between mortal and fallen angels, it varies from pantheon to pantheon, but most people would agree that the fallen angels came to this planet because Genesis 6 says so. Now, everybody says it's the aliens, that the fallen angels were aliens. No, they weren't. The fallen angels, if you look at the histories, and this will clear up everything, because it just fascinated me. Because, you people always tell me, oh, Clyde, they're the Nephilim. No, the Nephilim are not aliens. They are vampires. They are giants. Okay? They're the giants of old, but they were considered vampires. And so here's how it goes here. So when the women in Genesis 6 were attacked by these men of renown, these titans, these warriors, you get the impression that maybe they found them attractive and they want to be with them. No, they were raped. These women were raped by these titans. They came down from the heavens. They came down from the sky. They were the fallen angels. They were the fallen watchers. They were the Grigori, the watchers, the Nephilim. And the women were not willing to be with these men. So easy to believe is it was said that no mortal could survive bearing a Nephilim or bearing a child of the Nephilim. So if you look at what Enoch said, and he relays the accounts of the book of the Watchers. Okay, these are books that didn't make it to the Bible for some reason. Why? Because they talk about these vampiric fallen angels, Nephilim, came down, raped the women in Genesis 6. The women that gave birth to these children of the Watchers died. Many of them died in childbirth. So if you read the book of Enoch and if you read the Vampire Codex, it basically fills in the blanks where the Old Testament, isn't very clear as to what was rewritten throughout the years. And this is what Enoch said about the Nephilim. And there's an indication that many women raped by the beings died while bearing these cannibal hordes. They were called the cannibal horde of giants. It says here in Enoch, and they became pregnant, and they bore great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink their blood. Now that's from Enoch, saying that the Nephilim, the offspring of the Nephilim, turned out to be these giants that would go and consume everything around them, including eating the flesh of humans and drinking their blood. Now, this was the creation. If you remember, this is the creation that God saw as being profane and wanted to destroy the planet. So roaming the earth at the time were these vampiric Nephilim that God wanted to destroy. There's also this group within vampirism, or at least a section in vampirism that talks about the Nodist view of a second Genesis, and this is the second Genesis of the vampire that appears in this non-canonized biblical book called the Book of Nod. If you're taking notes on this, you'd find this fascinating, but I'm just telling you. There's a book called the Biblical Book of Nod that speaks of vampiric offspring from Lilith, which, of course, Lilith didn't make it in the Bible, but Lilith was allegedly before Eve. But Lilith is like this female demon associated with child killing and bloodletting for prolonging immortality. In the Book of Nod, it is insinuated that the first vampire was born of Lilith and Cain, and this is not a big jump from the information found in the Book of Enoch. The Book of Nod tells that when Lilith refused Adam, she was cast out of the Garden of Eden and made to live next to the Red Sea, where it is believed the Watchers, the Grigori, the Nephilim, were residing as well. And this is what the Book of Nod says about the relationship between Lilith and one of the Nephilim, the vampire. For beyond the land of Eden lay the land of Nod, where Cain ran to. He saw lands to be tilled and animals to be tamed, yet he would not do God's work. Cain cursed his existence and refused to give glory to God. He wandered alone along into the night. Then upon him came a woman, garments dark as night, woven from the shadows, skin as pale as the moon, with a chill as cold as winter's grasp, eyes and lips glowing as embers in the night. Cain questioned who this woman was. She responded as, I am Lilith, second created from God. First banished Lilith of unnatural power with the belief of a survival of the fittest. Lilith taunted Cain, showing him her dark power, but not teaching it to him. So he took her blood, devoured her powers. Believing he became stronger with the belief of survival of the fittest, he took it upon himself to taunt Lilith and the children of Seth, the belief of conquering the brood of Seth, and if these shall worship me, they are free to do so. And so came temptation. And the temptation was the drinking of blood and the eating of flesh. So came the temptation of being a monster, a vampire, an inheritor of the Nephilim. Nephilim are not aliens. No. They're far from it. The Nephilim are vampires. The Nephilim are giants. The Nephilim are giant vampires. The Nephilim that existed at the time were seen as profane revenant beings and were destined for destruction by God. And so you have this same legend going from time to time to time to time to time, even after the flood, the fear of the Nephilim or the inheritors of the Nephilim. The inheritors of the Nephilim were the vampires, and they went into hiding. And many believe that the Nephilim were also part of a conspiracy to continually thwart the bloodline of God, the bloodline of Christ, the divine bloodline of human beings, and to create some sort of obstruction or some sort of, I guess you'd call it a destabilization of the DNA, making it more and more and more barbaric, more and more devilish, demonic, vampiric. You see the trend here? You see this is what the battle of good and evil is, right? This is the battle of how we battle ourselves from being upright, upstanding children of God into becoming the dark and perverse, drinking blood and eating flesh. And so vampire mythologies are based on biblical tales as well. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. Studies of the old ancient writings, I'm learning a lot about the Nephilim. And I didn't know that I would, and that's what it's starting a whole new interest in the Nephilim, because most people will tell me, well, the Nephilim are the fallen angels and they're the aliens, so I don't, But the Nephilim, in theory, we're looking at Nephilim were the creators of the first vampires. And this is something, they're the inheritors. The fact that Nephilim exist in the Bible, I think, is very important to point out. So we're looking at the offspring of the Grigori. We're looking at the offspring of the Watchers. 200 angels, according to the Bible. 200 angels that were cast out of heaven by God. These angels became arrogant and desired to be equal to God, whilst also they plotted to go down upon the earth and take the daughters of man to mate with them, as they had captured a great lust for human flesh. And God made himself clear that no angel would come down and lie with the daughters of mankind. Now, Genesis 6 doesn't give you much, only that the Nephilim came down and the women were desirous of having sex with these angels. But if you look at the book of Enoch and you look at the other books that were taken out of the Bible, no, this was rape, this was attack, and most of the women that gave birth to the offspring of the Nephilim died in childbirth, and they gave birth to these giants. And so it's a tale of the mortal and the fallen. And so if you read as what it says in the book of Enoch, it says the following. It says, and they became pregnant, and they bare great giants whose height was 3,000 ells. Now, I don't know what 3,000 ells means, but it says its height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, to devour one another, to devour one another's flesh and drink their blood. So with this knowledge in mind, I think maybe we should reconsider what the Nephilim are. What the Nephilim are and what they might be. Let's go to Ray quickly in Michigan. Hi, Ray. You're on Ground Zero.
Oh.
Go ahead. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, Clyde. Great topic. I've actually done a lot of reading on this myself, in the Bible, and in the book of Jasher.
Mm-hmm.
Also has a great explanation of the origins of the Nephilim. And the book of Jasher actually describes that the Nephilim are the offspring of the angels, the Watchers. That's also regarded as when they descended from heaven to Mount Hermon in northern Israel, and then those events where they interbred with women, wives that they chose, and the children, the offspring, were the Nephilim, the hybrid human-angel hybrid. And
right. Now, do you know what else Mount Hermon has a significance for?
No, but I find it very interesting that it's prevalent in the Bible as well. There, Genesis 6, and in the book of Jasher.
Right.
But other than that, no. I don't know where you're going with that.
I believe that Mount Hermon, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, I'm just saying this now, I'll do more research on it for the next hour. But I think Mount Hermon was the area where a lot of biblical archaeologists believe that the first humankind, as we are now, also came from Mount Hermon.
I can't speak to that.
Okay. Well, I'll look into it because that mount seems familiar. It's a high mountain where they say that the first humans, as they are formed now, came into being because the humans before were different than the humans we are now, and also the giants roamed the land, and they also ate up a lot of the human beings in the area, and they drank their blood. It's an amazing thing that we discover this. If we look closely at what the old scriptures are saying, what the sages have said, the Nephilim are vampires. We'll be back.
Spinning complacently in the darkness, covered and blinded by a blanket of little lives, false security has lulled the madness of this world into a slumber. Wake up, an eye is upon you, staring straight down and keenly through, seeing all that you are and everything that you can never be. Yes, an eye is upon you, an eye ready to blink. So face forward, with arms wide open and mind reeling. Your future has arrived. Are you ready to go?
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said, hear that? Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up.
Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. In my studies of all things scary for Halloween, I stumbled upon something that I wanted to talk about tonight because I think it's very important that we discuss this, because for the longest time, I always had my suspicions about vampires in the Bible and whether or not they exist. And I have said, just, off the cuff, I've said, yeah, well, of course there's got to be vampires in the Bible because, the idea of the eating of the flesh and drinking of the blood is a ritual that, when performed in a sacred sense, it is the sacrament. But there has to be a profane opposite of it, and it is. It's a vampiric type of ritual that is the Imkeper, the ritual that happens concurrently with that of Samhain. Now, I had talked about in the last hour the book of Enoch, the book of Genesis, and all that Genesis 6 talking about the Nephilim. And I found that the Nephilim are the inheritors of the vampires, or the vampires are the inheritors of the Nephilim. In fact, in the book of Proverbs, it says, there is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives to devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. And they have hair as the hair of women, and their teeth are as like the teeth of lions. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. So yes, they're not coming right out and calling them vampires, but they're saying that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I mean, if there's any indication of what we're up against, it is up against the real vampire, not the mythological vampire, not the shiny vampire from Twilight, but a real vampire that robs the innocents from those who are innocent, who takes pleasure in the pain of others. Now, there are vampire subcultures that don't see themselves as bad at all. They're just trying to fit in, but that's not the vampire I'm talking about. No. When you look at the ancient writings of the alchemists, when you see that there was a very important connection between the vampire and the Nephilim, and they mention the Nephilim by name in these writings, in the Vampire Codex and elsewhere. If you believe the word of the Bible and the history of the Old Testament, the small mention in the 6th chapter of Genesis of these giant titans that have fallen from grace are key to tracking the history of the rise of the vampires. Nephilim are not aliens. They're vampires. They're the fallen angels, the inheritors of the vampire legend, the idea of them that drink the blood. In Genesis 6, it talks about these fallen angels, the Watchers, the Grigori, that came down and had sex with women, and it created these creatures. And from the book of Enoch, we read this. It says, and they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind, and they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink their blood. Then, of course, there's the book of Nun that talks about Lilith and Cain, and actually the children of Seth, and how all of them believed, there was a belief in the conquering of the brood of Seth, because they wanted to consume human blood. And so came the temptation to consume human flesh. Then come the temptation to rob the meek of their innocence. Some of the earliest beliefs surrounding vampires came on the heels of the conversion of the Slavic people to Christianity, sometimes between the 7th and 8th and 9th centuries. Now, before Christianity, Slavs predominantly cremated their dead in the belief that a person's soul would only be released with the burning of their body. Now, when missionaries converted them, and then the new practice of burying the dead happened, it horrified a lot of people. So you look at the archaeological record, and it shows an explosion of burials in the 7th and 8th centuries in which a stone was placed on top of bodies to keep them deep down in their graves, as well as other practices such as putting things in graves to appease their dead relatives. There was also the idea of running a stake not through the chest, but through the area below the stomach, pounding a stake in so that the body could not rise from the grave. So without the fire, without the ritual of fire to release the souls of the dead, a lot of the Slavs, after they converted to Christianity, saw the practice of burying the dead as impure. So thus we get this Slavic play on the Latin word vampire. We have vampire, which of course is derived from the Latin word impurus. Impure, unclean. The vampire is an unclean body, an unclean soul. Corpses in the 15th and 16th centuries were actually nailed to their coffins to keep them from rising from the grave. Now, a key part of Modern vampire lore usually involves the bite that kills someone and brings them back. And they, of course, become an undead creature thirsty for the blood of the living. Well, in Slavic cultures, almost all of the cases where vampirism was assumed to be at play became known in retrospect. People still alive were not usually identified as vampires. Usually it actually came across instead as a way to explain a lot of the bad things that happened to communities or other people. So whenever something bad went down, they blamed it on the vampire. They blamed it on the impure, an impure body in our midst, an impure body that stands between life and death itself. So when an area was affected by plague, whenever there were failed crops, whenever there was flooding or some other misfortune, villagers might look up and they'll say, well, it's the dead that did this. It's the recently dead that created this. Too many dead, and too many of these dead standing between death and life and death. So if there was a plague, the blame was usually put on the first person to die from a disease. Well, it was that person that died from this plague, and then that person stands there and basically infects everyone else, and they too become vampires. They too become the revenant beings that stand between life and death. They are the ones that occupy that seat. They are the ones that came down from the virus that was spread during the times of the Nephilim and the giants of old and the men of renown who came down from heaven and had sex with the daughters of men. They spread the virus, the blood virus that is there to kill you. So vampires were pariahs. Vampires spread their disease. Vampires would always show up in times of plague. Now, it's funny that many of you don't know that the same is happening today. And unfortunately, the age of the plague has returned. And we should be aware of what it represents and how the vampires feed in times of plague. Now, I don't know if you know this, but some 13,000 cases of the pneumonic plague, which is transmitted by air, have now been confirmed. An estimated 50 million lives were lost as a result of the Black Death epidemic in the 1300s. 50 million people dead from the Black Death epidemic, the 1300s, the pneumonic plague, which is transmitted by air. And now, the pneumonic plague has spread into more African countries after it began in Madagascar. Countries affected include South Africa, Mozambique, Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, and it's spreading rapidly to all parts of Africa. In East Africa, there is a phenomenon known as it's actually being called blood thievery. Blood thievery has been plaguing areas of Malawi. Vigilante mobs in Malawi have killed at least 5 people in connection with vampire attacks. Now, arrests have been made, but people are still stealing blood from others. Curfews have been imposed. Yet the current response by the government of Malawi is unlikely to find a lasting solution to the problem of vampirism in East Africa. Similar attacks and killings have happened before with the same measures utilized to contain it. But once again, in the time of plague, we see vampires rising up in East Africa. 1,300 cases of pneumonic plague now transmitted by air. 1,300. The epidemic where it killed 50 million people was in the 1300s. The numbers are strange. The numbers are significant. And the rise of the vampires in East Africa are something to be thinking about tonight. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
You're listening to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. Let's go to Adele in Texas. Hi, Adele. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. How are you?
Doing good.
I'm so glad you're talking about this topic because I had something awful that happened to me in 2013.
What happened to you?
I was, I woke up and I was feeling great. Nothing unusual, but by the end of the day, I was dying. And this was May the 31st, 2013 at 7:30 at night. And I called my son and I said, Chris, you have to come get me. I'm dying. And my son thought I was joking. And I said, Chris, come get me. I'm in trouble. So he calls 911 for the ambulance to come and get me. And I couldn't, I was going to go in and take a bath. And a little voice told me, no, don't take a bath because you're going to drown, because I was fainting and fainting and fainting. Well, when I got to the hospital, the doctors told me, you don't have any blood. And you know how they bring the paper to you even though you're on your deathbed, sign it. So I did, I signed it, and I said, what's going on? And he said, your vitals, you're dying. And he said, we have to give you blood, you're on empty. So I have to believe what you're saying because I started studying it myself. When you read Revelations 12:9, God is talking about the fallen angels, how he threw them to the earth.
Yeah.
And Matthew, when you read Matthew, if you put Matthew, New Testament Matthew keys, Satan has the keys to this land, to this earth. I have to believe everything you're saying tonight.
Where do you think you lost the blood? Did you have any sign of blood loss? Where did the blood where did you lose it?
No signs, no nothing.
You just lost blood.
When I woke up, I woke up with like a week later, long, ugly fingernails on me. I woke up with a waffle mark on my left hand. I'm left-handed. But it would have been where something was inserted to me, and I had the same waffle marks on my legs. They're just little tiny square waffle marks that are embedded into my skin,
So somebody took your blood in the nighttime when you were sleeping.
Right. And see, and this is very scary what I'm going to say. 2 new families moved in across the street from me. And that day when I went to go get my mail late in the evening, I passed out by the mailbox. The guy ran and got me, picked me up, and I have to believe what you're saying. I started studying it. When you read the book of Jasher, let's go back. When you read King David killed Goliath and cut his head off and buried the head and the body separate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Judas, in the book of Judith, in the Apocrypha, Judas killed Holofernes, the top general to Nebuchadnezzar, and cut the head off, took the head with her, mm-hmm. and took the head with her, took it to Jerusalem, I think, and, mm-hmm. and inserted a stick and put the head on top of the stick.
Do you know where they buried the head of Goliath?
I think it was, Mount Hermon?
Golgotha.
Right, I think
they buried at Golgotha, and so when they crucified...
Wait a minute. Now, I want to tell you, I'm going to finish in the book of Jasher.
Okay, quick.
Esau killed Nimrod and cut his head off.
Right.
So to me, when I read all of this, the antidote for what's coming, we're going to have to learn to cut the heads off giants.
Of vampires. I mean, listen, right. The thing is that when Jesus died on the cross, and they said that it would bruise, the serpent's head, that Jesus would be the one to basically stomp on the serpent's head. The head of Goliath was in Golgotha, the skull. They actually had the head of Goliath in the same area where Christ's cross was, and he bled
right.
on that area, on top of the blood of the, yes. The blood trickled through to the head of Goliath, the serpent's head.
The spirit of Goliath.
Right.
The spirit of Goliath lives among us.
Yes. So yes, the vampire, the vampire legend isn't a legend. There are vampires, and they prey on the weak, and they prey on the innocent. And we're hearing about them now. We're hearing about them being sexual predators, but they're far deeper. I mean, I'm not talking about the subculture. I'm not talking about people who, drink blood because they feel a need, or I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about are the very sinister, perverse, shape-shifting vampires that were talked about in the ancient writings of the Bible.
I had a bad experience. I looked. I don't sleep night, Clyde. I stay awake all night because I work nights all my life. And I'm a senior citizen now, but I read. I read all the time. Right now, I'm reading about the stones that were embedded in the breastplates of the holy priests.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing is leading me into another and another and another thing. But anyway, I noticed a shapeshifter. I won't tell you where, but near me. And I said, "Oh my God, oh my God." And all I could think of was, is this how I lost my blood,
Well.
But can I mention a YouTuber that I ran into his videos?
What's his name?
By accident.
What's his name?
He's talking about vampires. He's showing you.
What's his name?
Is Rich Blackman.
Rich Blackman. I'll look into Rich.
No, you have to spell it RICHBLAKMAN.
Okay, I'll look into Rich Blackman. I'm out of time. Thank you for your story, Adele. Take care and watch your back. Thank you. What a gripping story that was. Horrifying. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I told you, vampires are real. I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. Tonight, Nosferatu, Weakened by the Light. When you shine a light on the vampire becomes real. They no longer lurk in the shadows. They have found ways to embrace religion. They've found a way to embrace the synagogue. They've found a way to embrace the mosque. They are there among us. And they are not part of some mythology. They are rooted deeply in the Bible. Quite frankly, if you look, you can see that there are scriptures in the Bible that state the vampires. They don't come right out and say vampire. The impure, the Latin word impurus, vampiros, impure. And this is something about the impure spirits and the impure souls that inhabit those spirits, the shape-shifting demons, the Nephilim. The vampires are the inheritors of the Nephilim. It's not aliens. I found this out as I was reading these old grimoires. They knew, these old sages and sorcerers, they knew exactly where the vampires came from. They came from the time of Enoch. They came from the time of Nimrod. They were there in the beginning of the Garden of Eden. And they were there to thwart the blood, or at least the bloodline of God, the divine bloodline of God. That was their purpose. And they became giants. Many of them were gigantic. Many of them were seen as giants. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Let's go to John in Florida. Hi, John. You're on Ground Zero.
Oh, hi, Clyde. How are you?
Doing great.
Yeah. I want to congratulate you. This is the first time I've ever heard on the radio anybody ever saying Golgotha had contained the skull of Goliath. And, of course, Golgotha and Goliath are the same name.
Yes.
And yet nobody was able to put that together. And I think it's kind of sad statement of mankind that they can't figure that one out. But also, they probably had the Ark of the Covenant under there, too. And so he was bleeding onto the mercy seat. So he also had the Ark of the Covenant in that cave. That's probably where they hid both the skull and the cave.
If we are able to put that together, Golgotha, Goliath, and the skull, knowing that his blood had split the head of the serpent, meaning the head of the reptilian faction, Nephilim, the reptilian faction of the vampire, then Jesus conquers the vampire. And he did so with the rituals that were sacred, that were once reserved for the vampires, and he changed them to fit the need of those who wish to take on his body and blood sacrifice. That is the most important thing we need to remember, is that he purified the vampirism that ran rampant in the ancient times.
All right, but Clyde, I want to say one more thing, if I could.
Sure.
I was thinking about it, and of course these reptoids look much like devils. And in the Garden of Eden, according to the books of Eden, Adam and Eve couldn't tell the difference between God and Satan because they looked so much alike. They were like brothers. They couldn't identify them in the books of Eden. And so sometimes they were worried about God, sometimes they were worried about his brother, but they really weren't sure of who was good and who was bad.
Did you know something? Let me tell you something, John. It was funny because when Jordan Maxwell was in Las Vegas, he made a comment about that I thought was very interesting, and it's very coincidental that you bring this up. He made a statement about, remember when it said in the Bible, let us go down and make man in our image after our likeness? Remember where it says that?
Yeah.
He said that what that might indicate, and this is what a rabbi had said to him, what it indicates is that man existed, that God created man, but at first he didn't create man in his image. He just created man, and man was there. And in order to differentiate man from the beasts and from the fallen angels, he made man look like him. So they went down and the gods made man in their image rather in some hideous image or hideous form that would not be different from, like you're saying, the difference between a devil and the difference between a Nephilim or a Watcher or anything else, that mankind was the perfect being that was created in order to be select and different from the angels.
Yeah. Anyway, Clyde, there's another issue at stake here.
What's that?
And that is the Kennedy papers.
Oh, we're not going to talk about that tonight. We're not going to talk about that tonight.
I know.
No, we have a full show ready to go in November for it. We're going to tell you all about it. We're not going to talk about the Kennedy papers tonight. I'm sorry. It's not what we're talking about. Please. I mean, that's great. And we can talk about the Kennedy papers another time, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have the best show about the Kennedy papers, and it will be. I promise you. It'll be newsworthy. Let's go to Tony in Indiana. Hi, Tony. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde, I've got a question. It's obvious if you're a Bible believer that there were giants. And, you hear about out in the Old West and even around St. Louis, even in Ohio, they would dig up giant skeletons. And the first thing that the Smithsonian would do was come in and take over the dig and hide them away. Mm-hmm. I mean, if that's the case, is it the people in charge trying to keep the truth from us?
Why would they want the truth about vampires to come forward? Why would they want hideous giants that had sharp teeth as like swords, according to Proverbs? Why would they want us to know about that? Because then we would know something about how the heritage of mankind had been thwarted by those in power, the powerful ones with the sharp teeth that hide in the shadows. That's the thing, is that they want to hide the truth about vampires. They want to make them all so we can embrace them now. It's the watered down version of vampire.
They want to deny the Bible too. They want to make sure that we don't know that the Bible's real. And you said something about Africa with the bubonic plague. It really gets me is it's synchronous to me. I was just reading an article today that we have U.S. troops in 49 of 54 African countries right now.
Right.
And
once again, in the times of plague, so rise the vampires. And they're having the same problem in East Africa about blood thievery. They call them blood thieves, and they go in and they steal the blood from the living. And they're considered true vampires. And you just heard Adele when she called in tonight saying that she didn't know where her blood went, that it happened in the nighttime. So she said she firmly believes that there are vampires out there. And I used to think that it was all like some snicker mythological thing, but no. The more I got to know the subculture of vampirism, I wrote a vampire film, it was out called Nightfall. You can rent it at some video place if you want to. When I did that, I realized, after learning and discovering vampires and the subculture and everything, that yes, vampires have their roots in ancient biblical scriptures, some of them removed from the Bible, and others that most certainly are quoted and people are aware of, and I think we need to be aware of it.
Yeah, it's just amazing, and all this stuff going on in other situations too, how, it does seem like perilous times, that's for sure.
Right, and finally the vampires are being shown the light, and that's why we're seeing all of this new revelation coming out about predatory people and sexual predators. Let's go to John in Washington. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, Clyde, Mount Hermon is the site, supposedly, of where Jesus was transfigured. And I knew that name as soon as you said it. I had to look it up. Also, the one of the rules, if you will, God said, do not drink blood for obvious reasons. And that's everything that you read, Old Testament, the book of Enoch, so states that that's what the evil ones were doing.
And see, that's the thing. Why would God warn about drinking blood unless people were doing it as a practice? They were drinking blood and they were eating flesh.
Absolutely.
And that's probably why it had to be said.
And with Enoch and the book 1, which can be validated, if you will, he names names of the fallen angels, of what they did, what they gave to mankind, etc. And that book was pulled out of the Bible around 1630, what I have read, when they basically did the revamp and publishing of it. It was a push with the Puritans, wanted it out, whatever. But hey, if he's the prince of this world and he doesn't want people to know, he puts in undue pressure, gets that book of Enoch tossed out. I mean, there's got to be something to it, Clyde, when you have apostles quoting it.
Yep.
You know?
And I don't understand why Christians don't accept that. They don't see that, and they don't understand that while they tell you the Bible is the most complete book on the planet, then why are the apostles quoting books that don't exist in the Bible? That's what I want to know. And why did they take them out? Because they would take out the very secret of vampirism. They would take out the secret that vampires exist. That's why they did it.
And they knew those books were current, around. They studied them at the time. Also, Stitchens has got a little, Zachariah Stitchens, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, but, has a whole couple of chapters on Lilith.
Oh, sure.
And her exploits. So, and wherever Marduk shows up, there is cannibalism and human sacrifice.
That's exactly right. The horned god of Moloch. Yes. You would take the baby to Carthage and you would drop it in the arms of Moloch. Yep, you're right.
Absolutely, and let's face it, that's what they were doing.
That's right.
And anyone says no, you got to be blind, because even the Lord said, as in the days of Noah, so they will be doing in the end times.
And now the vampires are coming to light, aren't they?
And we got plagues, and we've got stories of soldiers coming back from Afghanistan saying these guys were not 7 feet tall. These guys were huge.
A lot bigger than we think. It's scary to think about it, but yeah.
Thank you very much,
John. Thank you for the call. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable how it's coming up now. It's unbelievable how it's rising to the surface. It's unbelievable that people, you're not going to get it in the mainstream. The mainstream media is not going to tell you about this. They're not going to tell you about real horrors. They're not going to tell you, they want to keep you glued with terrorism. They want to keep you glued with scandal. But if you go back in the histories and you read the true histories of the world, there is a place, a foot marker right there in history about vampires and how they still exist and they hide among us. The true vampire. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero, and we'll be back. Let's go to Brian in Illinois. Hi, Brian. You're on Ground Zero. Hey, Brian, hang up. Okay, let's go down to Bob in Montana. Hi, Bob. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. Let me kill on the radio. Dead. I've been listening to your show, and I keep thinking about my brother-in-law, or he used to be my brother-in-law when my wife was alive. As long as she was alive and I cared for her, I didn't worry about it, but she's passed. I told you about you saving my life winter before last. Anyway, he is an absolute and truly evil person. I mean, right out of the gate. And I don't mean stupid. I mean evil. He's a meth cook to start with. He's a very good one. In the 90s, he impregnated his 12-year-old daughter, stepdaughter. forced her to stay at home without any prenatal care and bear the child. I went to the district attorney, turned state's evidence. I was a cop for a long time, and I couldn't stand what was going on. He got 7 years in Pelican Bay, which is a very special prison for child molesters, so that the other inmates don't kill them. And he swore to kill me for standing up in court and testifying against him. Now, this guy is, the last I've heard of him, he's about 5'7", 5'8", maybe 140, 150.
Mm-hmm.
Not a very big, impressive giant, but he is black evil. His teeth are shiny black. Nobody can explain it. But when he smiles at you, it's like looking at a Montagnard, who chew the betel nut.
Mm-hmm.
In Vietnam, that was very popular. But my wife's gone now, and he has sworn to come, and he's in California, and I'm in Montana. But he has sworn to come and kill me, and I wait for it. I wait for the opportunity. I've never wanted to. I've never waited with this kind of anticipation. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's hope he doesn't harm you. It sounds like he's very evil. Let's hope he doesn't harm you. And
at 60 years old, he shot his best friend through the stomach with a .357 to see what would happen.
This guy sounds like he doesn't even deserve to be let out of jail.
No, and for somehow you talk about evil, demonic influence. When all was said and done with the child, he got custody of the infant boy, born with a club foot. Can you believe that?
It's just terrifying to think that this happened that way.
Yeah, the girl who was the mother she was beautiful beyond belief. She died from uterine cancer. She was a high-class prostitute, a call girl. And this guy he is nothing but smart. He's an incredible chemist. I'll give you one example of his brilliance. You know what a Rubik's Cube is.
Mm-hmm.
You hand that man a Rubik's Cube, and in less than 60 seconds, you've got 6 colors staring at you. He can solve any Rubik's Cube, no matter how it's set up, in less than 60 seconds.
The story is just, it's really hard to think about, really. It's just, it's
hard
just
to believe.
Yeah, it's the perfect example of, like you say, evil, good, pure evil. You're right, Bob. It's true. And once again, people say, when you say vampire, people think of a Hollywood version. Well, beyond the Hollywood version, it's watered down and homogenized. There is this story that you tell, and there's stories that other people tell, like Adele telling her story about, losing blood at night. Blood. Yeah, all her blood. I mean, where does that come from? How does that happen? No one knows.
I believe it.
I believe it too.
Every word of it. And I'm a very practical person, Clyde.
Well, Bob, thank you.
I don't call you unless I know something that is absolutely true. And this is, I swear on my life and my salvation, this is the truth.
Well, Bob, thank you for calling the program. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
You're very welcome. I hope it adds to the giving people
some awareness.
This isn't a joke.
No, it's not a joke at all. I agree. Coming up, we may have a conversation with a vampire. A woman named Erica. We'll be back. I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Now, when we talk about vampires, there are the vampires of old. There's a historical view of vampires, biblical histories where vampires exist. And I'm sure much of what I'm saying you may not agree with, but if you look diligently enough in the scriptures, the old scriptures and beyond, you will find that, yes, there was a war. There's a war anciently within the biblical texts of vampires. The Malleus Maleficarum talked about how to destroy vampires, how to hunt down werewolves, and how to find witches. There are other texts and grimoires that written in the 17th century that discussed vampirism. But now we have turned the vampire into something more than just a revenant being who sucks blood and maybe even seeks out and destroys the virtuous and takes away the innocence of the pure. We have the vampire subculture, which is an alternative lifestyle that basically is like the Gothic lifestyle. Essentially, vampires or vampire lifestylers are individuals who are attracted to the look and the history of vampirism. You see them around. Many of them hang out. They wear vampire-like attire. They decorate their homes with Victorian furniture. The subculture is like any other system of beliefs where people commit themselves to a lifestyle. They maintain ethical tenets within a system. They participate in rituals that basically edify them and make them feel spiritually sound. And there are different types of vampires within the vampire subculture. And it's not always understood, and I don't pretend to understand it, only that I remember in high school, I liked hanging out with the goths. In fact, I used to go to Gothic clubs a lot, and many of the people that I ran around with was, cross-section of punks, pony boys, and goths. And, of course, I didn't know if I was a goth just because I listened to Alice Cooper, Kiss, and Bauhaus records. I don't think that was the case, but I liked kind of be part of that brooding lifestyle with clothes that were dark because there was nothing darker. But some of the different vampires that exist, there's psychic vampires. There are living vampires. They're very spiritual. They maintain a rigid ethical system. There's transcendental vampires. There's sanguinarians. Sanguinarians, though, are the ones that are most curious because they address themselves as real vampires because they believe that they have a physical and or spiritual need to drink human blood to maintain mental and physical health. Now, tonight, we were going to have Corvus Nocturnum on the program to talk about vampires. He, of course, is a well-known occultist and, of course, a Satanist, and he did not come on the program tonight because of the fact that he had an emergency where he had to go to the hospital. But we did manage to, and we have a relationship. We've met and talked with a woman named Erica, and we've talked with her before about coming on this program to talk about vampirism because she identifies herself as a vampire. Erica, are you with us?
I am, yes. Hi.
Hi. How are you? Yeah, it's good. It's good to hear from you. Now, what kind of, do you consider yourself part of the vampire subculture? And if so, what part of the subculture do you identify with?
Well, given your lead in, I have a lot of things to say about that, but I wouldn't actually.
So you wouldn't identify yourself as part of the vampire subculture?
No. No.
Would you call yourself a vampire then without the subculture attached to it?
I do.
Okay. How so? How are you a vampire, and how did you realize in your life that you were a vampire, you are a vampire? How do you identify with that?
Well, it started with dreams, and I think that it does with most of the others that I've known. Dreams or some sort of internal hint. I don't think it was always so much dreams as something similar to what Socrates called the daemon. Mm-hmm. And it's very much a guide. It's presumably the thing that tells you when to zig instead of zag. It's the thing that suggests you do certain things in your life that guide you in the right direction. Growing up in normal culture, when I heard things like this, when I had these dreams, I assumed I was being fantastical. But eventually, I came to know that that was not true, and I was fighting against a really strong tide. And everything kind of gelled at a certain point when, the symptoms and the suggestions became fairly clear.
So, what kind of dreams were you having?
Well, they may sound cliche, but really bloody dreams.
Okay.
And one of the interesting things about vampires like myself is that we all seem to have these sorts of dreams when we don't drink blood. When we don't drink blood for a time, usually a while. It's the sort of thing that you have difficulty in saying, well, it's just a coincidence. But we all do it.
So you do drink blood, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Now, you have to drink, you don't drink a lot of blood because isn't blood an emetic? Doesn't it make you throw up?
No, not me.
So blood doesn't make you throw up how much blood do you drink?
Well, what would you consider a lot?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I would consider an 8-ounce glass of blood to be something that would be a little much.
At least that.
Really?
Sure.
And who provides that blood for you?
Willing people.
So there are people that are donors to you? They donate blood to you to drink?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And how do you take it from them?
Well, myself, I take it from the vein. Medical needles are best. It's the most efficient way. You'll hear a lot of things from others who say, well, I use a razor or I use a scalpel and I cut. You don't get much blood from that. And those who say they do that, they're generally just playing around.
So you use needles, and then what? Are there people that volunteer their blood to you, or are there those who wish to give and not receive? Or I mean, what is this? How does one come to you and say, "I'm willing to give you blood, Erica, because I know that you're hungering for blood"?
Well, I think you asked a couple of questions there. So, as far as the needles go, it's no different than you might have a phlebotomist take your blood, or when you're giving to the Red Cross.
Are you a phlebotomist?
By default, yes, I am, but not trained, not licensed. So, but you learn quickly, or you go hungry. As far as how do I find donors, well, there's lots of different ways, but sometimes I just know someone who will give blood. It's almost instinctual.
And don't you worry about them giving you a disease of some kind? I'm not talking about, I know it's cliche to ask about HIV and things like that, but there are plenty of other things like, there's like tuberculosis, there's hepatitis, there's all these other things we pass along. I mean, how do you judge a good blood donor?
Another good question. And a lot of people will say, this is a mistake on my part, but I have found that instinct has worked just fine. Sometimes donors offer blood tests, and there have been situations in which I have not even worried about it. And so far, so good.
Is there any ritualism involved with some of these blood draws? I mean, or are they just like matter of fact, hi, I'm here, take my blood, have a good day? Or is this something that edifies you in a spiritual way?
Well, I don't practice any sort of rituals when it comes to blood. It's food. Although I should point out that I don't think it's 100% physical. It's not like I could eat boudin sausage and get the same effect. In our experiments, we've not found dead blood to be useful.
So dead blood's not useful. It has to come warm from the vein, correct?
Well, there are some who say that stored blood can be utilized, but I have not found that to be useful at all.
So there's more to it than just drinking the blood, correct?
I believe so, yes.
So not only are you drinking the blood, you're getting essence. Is that what you believe?
Yeah, I do. I believe that much like the body has an aura, I think that the blood has an aura. And I think there's definitely some energy involved. Although earlier you mentioned energy vampires, I think this is a misnomer. I don't think that this should be a term connected with vampires.
Okay.
There's a lot of things in this world that draw energy from other people, ghosts, as you're well aware, I'm sure. Even people, regular people, draw energy from each other constantly. I think attaching the word vampire to it is a bit sensationalist.
All right, Erica with us tonight on Ground Zero. We're going to take a break right now. Erica is with us. Erica is a vampire, and a very unique vampire, I must say, because I've interviewed plenty of those who say that they're vampires. Erica has a different view, a quite unique view about what kind of vampire she sees herself as. She says she drinks human blood, and she takes it via needle and drinks it herself, and there are people who donate it to her. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. More tonight on Ground Zero as we explore vampirism, modern and historical. We'll be back.
This is Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Erica is with us tonight on Ground Zero. She's a vampire, a very unique vampire. We talked with her about her lifestyle. She doesn't see herself as part of the subculture. She actually sees herself as a vampire that needs to feed on blood. Now, do you have a doctor, Erica?
I do, yes.
Is the doctor aware that you drink blood, or you partake of blood?
You know, she is. Though I don't know if she knows what to do with that.
I mean, does she think that you need to go to a psychiatrist or to someone to, deal with this? Or does she, has she given her opinion at all? I mean, if I were a doctor, I'd be concerned because, drinking blood, I don't know if that, it must help you, because I know for most people it would, like I say, it's an emetic. It basically would make a person throw up if they drank too much.
She hasn't rendered an opinion on it. She's, I'm here in Portland, so she's very PC.
So I guess being in Portland, Oregon, I guess they accept it because it's like they're open to lifestyle.
I suppose. I don't know what she believes. I've mentioned it and didn't go further than that.
Really? She didn't say anything?
No.
Not concerned for your well-being at all? No. So, okay, so how do you find donors?
There's multiple ways, but
Craigslist?
A lot of us use the internet, but I don't find that to be as useful anymore. Things seem to be going through a bit of a phase shift with the internet subculture, as you call it.
Being a person who doesn't consider herself part of the subculture, I bet it's difficult because, do you get looked down upon by others who are just basically, fashion failures that are goth fashion failures? Or what do you do about them?
I guess I have a mixed reputation, but I think that I get looked down upon by those who don't see things the way I do. It's starkly divided. There are some who believe that this is purely scientific and medicine's going to figure out a cure, and there are some who like to play up the theatrics of the whole thing, and in general, I'd say the online community is about 90-95%. They're just having fun, and it'll pass in a few years. But
so it's just a phase. It's a phase most of these guys are going through.
Most cases.
How long have you been a vampire? When did you start drinking blood?
I'd say, how long have I been a vampire? That's a good question. Were
you born a vampire, or did you just start getting the taste? You said you started dreaming about it.
Yeah, I believe that it's a by birth thing. I believe that it's in the blood, and like you, I've also come to the conclusion, or at least at the moment, my belief is that it is in the blood. It's genetic.
Are your parents vampires?
Not that I'm aware, but I wouldn't know.
Are they aware that you're a vampire?
No, I don't currently have any family. So.
Do you have a religious belief?
No, but I'm spiritual. And it has nothing to do with vampires.
It has nothing to do with vampirism. Your spirituality doesn't come from vampirism. What do you lean towards? Do you lean towards just some holistic lifestyle, some spiritual that's just undefined? Do you lean towards a certain religious belief? Are you pagan, druid? What do you think of yourself as?
I don't know if I can classify it. It's not. I lean towards the truth. I lean towards just finding more and more that seems to stick. I think that Christianity is fine too. I think that a lot of people are under the conception that if you drink blood that you're somehow evil, and that's just not true. I think that Christianity got a lot of things right in a lot of the writings, and at least some of it seems to intersect with other truths. And when I see that, I don't care who wrote it or said it.
Mm-hmm. You've heard the old saying that the truth is in the blood, correct?
Yes. And I think that, genetic memory, yes?
Yeah, that's all genetic memory. So somewhere, would you say that in your genetic memory, in your DNA, that maybe you had ancestors that were blood drinkers?
I do, actually.
Would you agree with me that the vampires have inherited the Nephilim, that they are basically the embodiment of the Nephilim?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do. I think that there is a watering down of the genetics over time, of course, but I definitely had come to that previous to us talking and you mentioning. It's been something I've been looking into for quite a while now. Wow. Okay, well, we're going to take a break, Erica, and we'll be back with more and your phone calls tonight. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis tonight. Erica, a unique vampire, of course, on the program tonight. She does drink blood. And she said that, even if it's Christianity that has the truth, she seeks the truth. And a lot of stuff, it's just some interesting things tonight. 888-673-3700. If you have any questions, 888-673-3700. We'll be back. I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. It is the night before Halloween 2017. And with us tonight is Erica. Erica is a vampire, and a very unique vampire because, of course, she doesn't always fit the mold of other vampires. She does say that she drinks blood. She said she had dreams that put her in that mode, actually having her come to the realization that she is a vampire. And now, have you sought out anyone that would be like you so that you could have a relationship with someone that could be a vampire like you that has the same type of ideas and feelings you do about vampirism? Oh, yes.
And is that... now, is this, and I don't want to get too personal because it's uncomfortable to get personal about this kind of stuff, but is it a relationship? Is it a relationship that would be considered, what would be heterosexual, homosexual? What would it be?
I was married to one.
You were married to a vampire?
Yes, I was married to another vampire, yeah.
Was it a female or a male?
Male.
So you're married to a male vampire. So, and how long were you married to him?
Almost 3 years. Didn't last very long.
So, was it just it didn't last very long because of typical reasons, or was there a difference in differences in the practices or the way you see vampirism?
Well, I'll say this. I think that most of us are somewhat sociopathic.
Okay.
And two sociopaths together can... I don't know how well that works, but...
Okay. So do you consider yourself sociopathic?
To some degree, yes.
In what regard?
You have to be somewhat sociopathic to drink the blood of people.
But see, okay, so what if the volunteers
can you imagine it any other way?
Well, I'm just saying, okay, so you're admitting you're sociopathic. So when we see a time where the volunteers don't show up, where the people willing to give you blood don't show up, what would be the course of action on your part?
That's a fair question. I've gone to animals before.
Really?
Sure.
Okay, what kind of animal blood have you had?
Rabbit.
Oh, is it because rabbit blood is what? Because I know that I used to raise rabbits and I found out they have no real nutritional value. I don't think. Rabbit blood is not the same as human blood. What about goat blood? It's better than...
Goat blood? I've not had it, so I wouldn't know.
I hear it's good.
I can only imagine that it tastes similar to goats. And
have you had goat meat? Do you eat meat? Do you eat meat? Are you or do you eat meat besides the blood you drink? I mean, do you have a regular diet besides just blood?
I eat food like
everybody else.
I imagine most people. Although
what's your favorite food?
My favorite food? Yeah. I enjoy a lot of foods, Clyde. I just I do have some allergies. I don't.
Well, you don't have a particular food that if I was just to say, Erica, I've got some great food here, macaroni and cheese. What do you think?
Really, really good steak.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
And I'll bet you like it rare, right? Or no?
I do.
So, okay,
how else do you eat steak,
That was a stupid
Clyde?
question. That was a stupid question. I'm just trying to... Okay, now here's a good question. And I know you may think it sounds silly, but do vampires like strawberry ice cream?
I can only speak for myself, and I like ice cream in general, yes.
But do you like strawberry? Strawberry's got to be the one. I've always heard.
Sure.
Now I know I've known a lot of vampires, goths, subculture dudes, subculture girls, and they always tell me that vampires they like strawberry ice cream for some reason.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stories about quote-unquote vampires, but
I just want to know if you like strawberry ice cream. See if you're part of the mold that I've talked with a lot of vampires in my day, Erica. You're the most unique, but I wanted to find out if there was just something about you that makes you the same. And I want to pin strawberry ice cream on you, and I just couldn't do it. Sorry.
So they say, yes.
So they say, yes. So, so you like rare steak. You're a big fan of steak. What vegetables do you eat, by chance?
What vegetables do I eat? I like broccoli.
Okay.
I like Brussels sprouts. I don't know.
You like leans and greens. And
sure.
Blood. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I like beets. Although I do like beets. That would be interesting because beets are, I don't know what it is, but juicing beets. Beets and apples in juice, as juice, yeah.
Does blood have a smell that you are most attracted to, that you are attracted to?
I wouldn't say that, no.
So you don't, the idea of the smell of blood is not something that attracts you to blood at all?
No, I think there's a pretty strong misconception about the concept of, vampires smell blood and they just can't control
I'm just
themselves.
curious because, usually what a person puts into their body for food, what a person puts into their body for sustenance, sometimes they can smell it in their bodies. It's like garlic, for example.
Absolutely.
Garlic has a smell when it goes through the blood because it's a blood purifier.
Yes, that's right.
And so that's why. So I was thinking if you take in a lot of blood, is there a smell that you have that you smell yourself and you have to cover up because of the fact that you're a blood drinker?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but there's a lot of foods do come through the blood as a taste, and some of them are intolerable.
Okay.
So garlic's definitely one of them. Curry, turmeric, oily fishes.
So this changes the taste of the blood? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yes, absolutely.
So if you drink the blood of somebody who has turmeric in it, the blood is foul?
Yes.
Garlic, the blood is foul?
Yes. Smokers.
Foul blood.
Oh, it tastes like an ashtray.
So if I wanted you to like my blood, what kind of diet would I have to have for you to like my blood?
Sweet things.
Like?
Fruit.
Fruit?
Fruit. And any sugar, really.
Really?
I suspect that vegetarians, well, I know for a fact, vegetarians are delicious. And
really?
You used to be
I could have had a V8. What?
You used to be Mormon, weren't you?
Yeah, I used to be Mormon. Yeah.
Mormons are delicious.
Oh my God, really? Why are they so delicious?
because the word of wisdom and the treating the body as a temple, no caffeine, no drugs, no smoking.
Well, I blew it.
They're delicious.
My blood probably tastes like crap because I drink a lot of Starbucks. See, right now,
Well,
hear this.
It's a bit like Pizza Clyde.
Hear this? That is my Starbucks cup right there, and I'm drinking a flat white 4 Splenda heavy cream. That's my drink.
It's sweet stuff, you know.
Yeah, but it's not real sugar, so you're not going to have a lot of fun drinking my blood. That's for sure.
Well, as I said, it's like pizza. You know, even bad pizza is good.
I don't know. I've had some pretty bad. I used to say that too, but I've had some pretty bad pizzas in my life, so I don't know if I'd agree with that one. But anyway, let's see if we have anybody. Let's go to Alex in Texas. Hi, Alex. You're on Ground Zero.
Yeah, I've heard that when people get organ transplants, they pick up habits and cravings from the donor.
I've heard that too.
Does that happen with blood as well?
That's a good question, Erica. So you're getting blood, because I've heard the same thing, that if you get, there was a number of stories that have, cellular memory stories of people who donate organs. When they get the organs, they take on the traits of the person. Do you find yourself, with the blood coming from others, that you may find yourself having cravings or something for other than the same person that gave you the blood would have cravings for, or at least would do?
No, it usually works the other way around.
What, they get something from you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the donors tend to imprint a bit. Whether that's psychosomatic or emotional, I have no way of knowing, but I've seen it happen.
What if it's transference? Do you ever see yourself as a person that if you take the blood from someone, that you give them something in transference because you have some sort of a power to do that?
Well, all I know is that donors, whether they intended to be donors initially and came to me, or those who I find and sort of turn into donors, okay, wait a minute. So do you coerce people to donate? I mean, you're saying people who weren't going to be donors but became donors. Is this like some involuntary hypnosis that you throw on people, or what? Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So you hypnotize people and coerce them into giving blood to you, like a real vampire would, like a real.
I think coerce is probably a strong word, but convince maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I think you're being very kind and convinced. I would say coerce, because I mean, I don't know of anybody that would just willingly go, okay, here's my vein, have at it. I don't think they do that unless you were doing something with your mind or your eyes or your or your voice or something. I mean, what do you talk them slowly?
All of it. You just mentioned all of it. You know, so as long as I've listened to you, Clyde, you're deeply intuitive, and I'm always surprised by the things you write and say. Mm-hmm. But you're right about all of that. Yeah, it's definitely something to do with the eyes, but it's also the voice. And for the question that was asked before, every donor I've ever had, whether they intended to be a donor, that was their plan from the beginning, or somebody that who has never donated before, but I convinced them to do it, I've never had one that said, well, that was a bad experience, I don't want to do that again.
Wow.
They usually want that again.
Wow.
So,
you know, out of all the vampires I've interviewed, you take the cake. I'll tell you, the more I interview you and talk to you, the more I'm like going, wow. I mean, you do sound like you're the real deal. I mean, others, like I say, they sound like, Goodwill fashion victims that just happen to find Victorian coats to wear, and they wear it face paint and everything else. You are definitely okay. We're going to talk more with Erica coming up on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
Back to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Tonight, Erica's with us on Ground Zero. She is a vampire, and boy, a very interesting one. Okay, I didn't even think of this, and everybody's sending me questions about the blood drinking, and you were talking about vegetarians, you were talking about sweet, you were talking about all those tastes, you were talking about things that make the blood taste sour or horrible. So here's the question, and this is an interesting question. What about marijuana smokers, and have you ever taken blood from somebody who is under the influence of either alcohol or drugs, and did it affect you when you drank their blood?
They're good questions. So I have drinking once before from someone who had just smoked marijuana before I fed from them. It was someone who was random in a nightclub, and one of their caveats before doing it was they had to smoke to be calm. Okay. And I expected to experience something, but I didn't, as far as the taste. As far as crossover
no
from...
contact high, no?
No, and I will tell you why.
Okay.
Because we have... When I say we, myself and other blood drinkers have experimented with drugs to see the effect blood would have on them. And we have ingested them. Alcohol, various drugs. And it stops alcohol completely.
So getting blood stops the effects of alcohol. Okay.
Yes, drinking blood stops the effects of alcohol.
Does it stop the effects of marijuana?
I don't know because I don't smoke it.
Okay.
But it stops LSD, for example, a very strong drug. One of the few things that will stop that is an antipsychotic. So it will stop that for about 20 to 30 minutes.
So you can get all strung out on LSD, drink blood, and it's gone for a few minutes. Does it come back?
For about 20 to 30 minutes. Yes, it does.
Wow.
Yes, it does.
Wow.
Some things go away completely, but...
Does drinking blood, other people's blood, cure you of things like colds and flus if they happen to be healthy? And what about these new companies now that take the blood of teenagers and feed it to older people to give them youth? Do you believe that works?
I think they're on to something, but I don't know what it could possibly do to somebody, to regular people. I would say that they are on to something because it certainly helps me.
Interesting. Well, Erica, I must say, I have wanted to get you on the show, and we finally got you on the show. And it's been the most unique interview with a vampire I have ever had because, I've had interviews with others, and they certainly, just the idea that you're able to get people to willingly give blood to you most certainly brings in the whole idea of a vampire's stare and ability to get you to give blood willingly. And I think that's an interesting concept, especially when I've never heard that before. I've heard people saying that they feed, they bite. I've heard that they get blood from friends who work at hospitals, but you sound like you're the real deal. Erica, thank you so much for being on the program tonight.
Thank you, Clyde.
You bet. Take care. That's Erica. And we'll be back with more Ground Zero and more history and more interesting tidbits about vampirism that you did not know right here. Don't go away. I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Tonight we have explored some of the most bizarre stories of vampirism. Erica, of course, on the program to talk about how she's a vampire. And it's a unique, most certainly a unique interview, to say the least. I'm very curious, though, about how, if you look through the ancient texts and the scrolls and you read about vampires, vampires come forward, or at least they come into the light, or the light is shined on them about the times of plagues and what would be known as famine. Now, that we're looking at famine of food or a famine of knowledge. And so, both seem to be in the wings, if not happening now. A famine of knowledge, a famine of intelligence failures, a famine of empathy and sympathy, a famine of ignorance. We have this ignorance, that was a famine of knowledge. But see, as I said earlier, the age of the plague has returned because we're looking at some 1,300 cases of the pneumonic plague, which is transmitted by air. It's now been confirmed. An estimated 50 million lives were lost of the Black Death when it happened in the 1300s. So 1,300 cases now. 1,300 was the year, or the 1,300 year time, the epidemic of the pneumonic plague, Black Death, happened in the 1300s. And now we're seeing that this disease has spread into more African countries after taking root in Madagascar. We had talked about that a few weeks ago. We also talked about the possibility of plague coming here in this country as they were spraying areas of San Diego streets with chlorine bleach because of possibilities of the hepatitis A outbreak. And with the trash piling up in the city streets from the homeless, we could see airborne plague happen here in the United States. In East Africa, there's a phenomenon known as blood thieves. Blood thievery has been plaguing areas of Malawi. Vigilante mobs in Malawi have killed at least 5 people in connection with vampire attacks. Arrests have been made there. The UN is aware of what's going on in Malawi. Curfews have been imposed. The current response by the government of Malawi is unlikely to find a lasting solution to the problem of vampires. Similar attacks and killings have happened before, with the same measures utilized to contain it. In 2002, villagers abandoned their fields following rumors of vampire attacks. Fearful residents attacked and killed suspects. 3 Roman Catholic priests who were strangers in an area were among those mistaken for vampires. Vampire attack claims continued because of the pervasive notion that human blood has occult significance. Local narratives attest to the existence of blood-sucking forces. Testimonies of alleged victims abound in local discourses in East Africa. Now, in 2002, the vampire scare rumors were linked to claims that the government was colluding with international aid agencies to supply human blood in exchange for food aid. The blood supply would then be shipped to elitists in the West that allegedly used it in transfusions to stay young. Now, this is all legend, according to the people in Malawi, right, in Africa. They're saying, well, legend has it that they take the blood and they ship it off to Western interests that use the blood transfusions of the young people to stay young, to stay alive. Now, it all sounds crazy, right? It says, oh, no, come on, Clyde. No, wait. Vanity Fair reported last summer that a company called Ambrosia buys blood from blood banks, and that there are claims, and actually that there are clients that pay big money to take infusions of blood taken from young people. It was suggested in the report that aging elites are using the blood of young people as a type of youth serum. The transfusion procedure is called parabiosis. Parabiosis is where they take the blood of young people, they use it in a transfusion to prevent aging. It's called parabiosis, and it's being done now. There's a company called Ambrosia in San Francisco that is doing this. Well, there's certainly nothing wrong with willing young adults selling their blood to the elite. The underlying theme of all this practice, I think, has some strong roots in the occult. And in most modern cultures, we deal with bloodletting in a way that none would suspect, or they do know. It's human sacrifice, mass murder, and it all takes place out in the open under the cover of war. Human warfare is a cover for the idea of culling and bloodshed and bloodletting. And while many argue that cannibalism has been eradicated, there are plenty of cannibals, or at least those who do ritual cannibalism behind closed doors. It's only the past few hundred years that the practice of cannibalism among royals has not been publicized. We're talking about royals, we're talking about people in power. In Europe, around the time of the American Revolution, there was something called corpse medicine. It was very popular among the ruling class. Charles II even brewed his own ambrosia for drinking. One thing we are rarely taught in school, and it's evidenced in literary and historic texts of the time, is that James I refused corpse medicine. Charles II made his own corpse medicine. He made his own. Charles I was made into corpse medicine. They took his blood and they made him into a medicine for others. So along with Charles II, eminent users or prescribers included Francis I, Elizabeth I surgeon John Bannister, Elizabeth Grey, Countess of Kent, Robert Boyle, Thomas Willis, William III, and the Queen Mary all practiced corpse medicine. They drank the blood of young people in order to keep alive for long periods of time. And what makes you think that the royals now don't do this in order to live as long as they've lived? Prince Philip. Look how he looks like a walking corpse. How does he do this? The Queen Mum, she lived to be, 101? The Queen is pushing 100 now. Prince Philip is pushing 100 now. How is it done? Well, aside from the gruesome historical and occult background of such practices, there's this idea that parabiosis works. Drinking the blood or taking in the blood of the young. And if that wasn't strange enough, the current royal family of England is claimed to have both the bloodlines of King David and the direct bloodline of Prince Vlad III of Wallachia, Count Dracula. Of course, the whole Dracula legend comes from a 15th century prince who ruled Wallachia, which is, of course, modern Romania. He was known as Vlad the Impaler because of his ruthless ways of killing his enemies. He's a hero, actually, to Romanians. Vlad was, actually, if you remember, he was vested in the Order of the Dragon, the son of the Dracul. The dragon, of course, is a symbol of power. And, of course, if you go to the business districts of England, you notice that in the business district of London, there are dragons surrounding the entire business district. The dragon is also the symbol that is on the Welsh flag, the flag of Wales, the dragon. The symbol is a powered dragon, and it's a dragon symbol. The coinage of the dragon symbol was on Vlad's coins, and it was the symbol, back then, a talisman of the devil. And consequently, the alternate meaning Drac was dragon, and of course, he had claimed that he was the son of the dragon, a prince placed him in place of great power, and with the bloodletting, he became, or eventually, he evolved in becoming Count Dracula. Modern tales of vampirism appear to be more than just groups of goth kids that are fashion victims. And the stories happen one after the other after the other. And personal accounts. You heard tonight Adele say that she had lost a lot of blood. She was dying. She didn't know what happened. She said that someone came to her the night and took her blood. Bill called and said that he knew somebody that his teeth were black. He said he was evil. His teeth were black, which, of course, if you looked at the teeth of some of these blood drinkers, their teeth are black as well. The stain never goes away. Triple 8-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Vampire stories are interesting because they're based on historic realities. The mythologies have been spun by Hollywood, and they have been gathering momentum over the years, but now we have homogenized the stories of vampires. We have watered down their stories to make them be characters that are misunderstood, pariahs that become loved. But why then now are we saying that we should accept the vampire? Who's pulling the strings, convincing us that vampires are flashy and glittery and loving? This ain't no Twilight. This is Ground Zero, and we'll be back.
FM News 101, KXL.
This is Ground Zero on FM News 101.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to you're listening to Ground Zero. Listen to Vampire. You just call it Vampire. Anyway, let's go to Brett, Louisiana. Hi, Brett. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, how you doing tonight, Clyde?
Doing good, man.
Hey, I had a thought about Mount Hermon and the fallen angels. When they went on Mount Hermon and then interbred with women and animals and whatever. Then you got nowadays, in our time, you have aliens that are, they say, taking eggs and sperm and hybridizing with themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I heard it said once that the exact opposite place on the earth from Mount Hermon was Roswell. Know about that?
I know. So it's the antipodal. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, the antipode. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that. That's bizarre. If that's the case.
So that, I don't know. It's kind of weird. They're both hybridizing with humans, and I don't know. It's a weird thought.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If there's a connection between, once again, you heard what Erica said. She said that she believes that vampires are the inheritors of the Nephilim. And so if that's the case, then whatever became of the Nephilim, the giants, the vampires, whatever they may be, then vampires will identify with that. The vampires of today, or the vampires that claim they're vampires today, said they have inherited the Nephilim, or at least the habits of the Nephilim.
Right. A lot of generations genetically watered down, like she said, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, how did you feel about that interview? I had never had an interview like it before. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people who've claimed to be vampires, but I've never had that kind of an interview before. It almost as if, like, I was almost convinced, that, people would, after talking to her, would actually voluntarily give blood.
Well, there are people who have it's called bloodlust. You get a taste for it, and you just have to have more of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever read the book, or not the book? It's a file called the Omega File.
No, I've never read the Omega File.
Oh, do a Google search, and you can read it online for free, and it's like your show. It has all the same subjects.
Right.
And it's pretty wild, man. It all talks about the battle, like you said, from Genesis 3:15, of the seed of God and the seed of the serpent. And there will be a battle where, like you said, Christ crushes his head.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of the book of the Omega File, is Christ wins,
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. Christ does win. And how did he win? He won by embracing the very thing. He made what was profane something sacred. And he made it a part of him. He died and became that sacrificial lamb and shed his blood, so the blood of the many would not be shed under the hands of the vampires, I think.
Right, and the people who have faith in him are made righteous by their faith, not by anything else.
Right. And what does Jesus give them? He gives them eternal life. But see, once again, Jesus gives everything that the vampire gives, but the vampire, I think, was the beginning, and it was a profane beginning. It was a profane lie. And Jesus came to correct that profane lie, and he made it so that he would be the one that would die and shed blood. And he basically literally exposed the vampires for who they were, the predators for who they were. And that's why he willingly decided to die on that cross, to show how the vampires and the predators would treat him, and they put him to death. But then he overcame death. He showed the vampires that he could overcome it by doing what God wanted rather than doing what the devil wanted.
And resurrection.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
And everything that a vampire does is basically blasphemy or heresy compared to what Jesus did, because Jesus proved it could be done with God and not with the devil.
Yes, sir.
I think that sums it up. I think that pretty much sums up what Jesus did. And I think that is one of the reasons why in vampire folklore we've always seen that if you hold a cross towards the vampire, he runs and flees. But the thing is that the vampire came before Jesus, and that's what I think is interesting, is that the vampire was here on the planet before Jesus, and Jesus came in order to vanquish the vampires, to vanquish those who were willing to shed innocent blood and drink the blood of the innocents. And he came in and said, no more will we have to sacrifice anything. I will be that sacrifice.
Yeah, he paid it all, man. You got that.
It makes it even more interesting, doesn't it, to be to be a Christian, I think.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, I appreciate the call.
Thanks. Good night, man.
Good night to you. Yeah, I mean, don't you find that interesting? That if the real reason, I mean, the resurrection, immortality of mankind was something that Jesus gave us because he was the sacrifice, because he knew that all around were predators and those who were into the bloodletting and the corpse medicine and all these things. It was all part of this occult, ritualistic, satanic bloodletting that he wanted to show that he would be the one who would lay his life down to just be the symbol of that which needs to stop. And that is the bloodletting of innocent human beings. And so if we followed in his example, I think if we were to truly believe that this is why it was done, then we wouldn't want to allow anyone else to shed blood, because that would be something that I think, if Jesus were here, he'd probably say, what was the purpose of me dying if all human beings want to do is drink blood? 888-673-3700. We'll be back. I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. The number's to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. When the angels fell and the Nephilim became well known, the giants and the vampires, the inheritors of the vampires, the inheritors of the Nephilim are the vampires. But there were names that were given of some of the chief vampires that taught mankind to allow for the bloodletting and killing and culling of their own kind. In fact, if you read in Enoch, it says, and Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose such a godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Semazar taught the enchantments and root cuttings. Amoros, the resolving of enchantments. Barkial taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel, the signs of the earth. Shamazel, the sign of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. At this point, God had enough, and he decided to wipe the evil from the face of the earth. And this, of course, is the prelude to a well-known biblical story, Noah's Ark. I was told at the beginning of this program that many people see that we're living in the time similar to Noah. Plagues, rumors of vampires, blood thievery, those who wish to prey on children or be predators to children or predators to women are all being revealed in the light now. We truly live in the age of a psychopathic vampire. I'd like your thoughts on that. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. You have a couple lines open, so if you wanted to call in and talk tonight, you're available to do so. Let's go to Kathy in Washington. Hi, Kathy. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. Hey, now here's something super creepy. So if you're squeamish, everyone, you might want to cover your ears. Okay, now I was reading on the Drudge Report today about the whole thing about the plague and everything. But what really freaks me out is they think the reason why the plague is spreading is because people will dig up their dead relatives and they'll dance with them.
Yes.
And they wrap them up and then they do their thing and they do it. I don't know if it's every year or by year. I don't know. But that was creepy to me, and that would make a whole lot of sense of why this plague is spreading. What do you think?
I would agree with you. I mean, what it is, I think it's called, what's it called? Famadahana? Is what they call it?
Yeah, I don't know that one.
It's called Famadahana. It's a ritual.
Yeah, it is.
It's a ritual that they do in Madagascar. And
Yes, you're right. Yep.
it's the turning of the bones ritual is what it is.
Okay, that's what
turning
it is,
the
yeah.
turning of the bones in Madagascar. It has an ancient origin where what had happened is that the people of Madagascar, the Malagasy rather is what they call themselves. They basically build their lives around death because they've had so many deaths that they build their lives around it. So they have these ceremonies where they turn the bones. And what they do is they go to villages where they have buried the dead or where they put the dead. And each family basically goes and holds a celebration. And they go to the ancestral crypts where the remains of the dead are taken out. They get wrapped in fine silk. And then so they don't smell, they pour wine all over it, and all over the body. And then they put all kinds of perfume over the body. And then they bring them out and they actually dance with them, or they even sit and have dinner with them.
Yeah, that's so gross. But I can't help but think, though, if someone died from some horrible disease or even the plague, if you will, and then they're digging them back up, you got to think there's a transfer there, and that is just. I wonder if they could, if there's any way to make them stop doing that. I think they, I don't know if they would get people to stop their rituals, but.
Well, I mean, if they were to tell them that they can't play with dead bodies that are loaded with plague, I would say, look what happens. But see, that's the thing is they keep, from what I gather, is they keep turning the bones, and they keep doing so until the body has decomposed completely. So if there's still anything left of the deceased, it still lingers. And of course, now we know that and there's also, from what I understand, some spiritual ritual that goes on where they turn the bones to communicate with the dead. So it's not only the dancing with the dead and reuniting with the dead, it's the prospect of the dead basically trying to communicate with them while they're turning the bones.
Wow, that is super creepy, though.
Yeah,
definitely a Halloween tale.
Definitely.
Thanks, Clyde.
You bet. Thank you. Take care.
Night.
See, and they see it as an act of love. Okay. And so if family members want to rub up against other family members that are dead that have the plague, then this creates a problem. And I don't know why. I mean, I guess, what? You can't just step in and say, I know this is tradition, but guys, you keep doing this and you're going to spread the plague even more. So yes, the plague is spreading. But see, what's even more disconcerting is that while the plague is spreading, people are taking the blood from the healthy. They're taking the blood from the healthy, and people are saying the reason why the blood is being taken is because they're selling it to companies that give it to the rich in the United States or the rich in the West, they say. The rich in the West get these blood transfusions of young people, which gives them the ability to live longer. And this is happening today. So, I mean, check me if I'm wrong here, but I think that's vampirism. I think that the vampires now, they don't need to hide anymore. They're in plain sight, and that's why you get interviews with vampires. You get to talk with vampires. Some are more, as Erica would say, some are more sociopathic than others, but they're sociopaths. So I think that tonight we really had an eye-opening interview, and we've had some eye-opening conversation with people who've had experience with vampires. Now, have you had an experience with something like a vampire? Do you know somebody who you would consider to be a vampire? I would say we've had a few stories, at least two, and I'm thinking that there could be more somewhere out there. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Taking your calls tonight on Ground Zero, talking about vampires and the background of vampires and where they start. They started in the Bible. They go back all the way. I mean, think about it. The idea of a Satan or the idea of the devil was a lot longer than the idea of a God or a Savior. That came later because the world needing some cleaning, some pretty big-time house cleaning of all the devil-worshipping, vampire-drinking, blood-drinking types that existed on this planet. So yes, vampires are real, and they may not have escaped the wrath of God. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL. This is Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Let's go to Sam in Washington. Hi, Sam. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde.
Hi.
I have some really strange things to tell you. Hopefully you believe me, because
Okay.
here it goes. So I lived in Seattle, Washington for about 4 years, off and on. The second time I lived there, actually, I'll just start with the first time. So the first time I lived there, I was on my way home from work one evening, and there was this strange man on the bus sitting right next to me. And I don't really talk to strangers, but I did have a conversation with him, and I really didn't look him in his face. And then I started to look him directly in the eye, and it just seemed like he was doing something to me to where I couldn't look away.
Mm-hmm.
I physically couldn't look away.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had some friends in the back of the bus, and he was telling me how him and his two friends, male and female, would pick people up and take them to a hotel, and they basically wouldn't be seen again. They would rob them, and who knows what would happen to them. And I really didn't know what to say. I just sat there and listened, and then as soon as my stop came up, I just ran off. And then he mentioned that he wanted him to, he wanted to come over to my apartment because he mentioned he wanted to make me his, which I really didn't know what that was supposed to mean. So I just ran off the bus as soon as I possibly could. And that was the first time that I lived there. And then also there was this store that was just right down the street from me, and they had a bunch of missing person posters up, and there were so many on there that they just kept falling on the floor, and they were all adults in the area. And that's usually Washington. Well, I don't know if it was those people or who knows. And the second time that I lived there was this man that I kept seeing who kept following me. First time I saw him in a mall, and he was a manager of a store. And as soon as I walked into the store, he sniffed the air as if he was smelling me like I was something to eat, which I thought was really strange, and it kind of freaked me out. And I was like, well, maybe he's smelling my perfume or my, shampoo or conditioner.
Mm-hmm.
But then as he started to talk to me, he just seemed really strange, and I wanted to leave the store. But then when I wanted to leave, it just felt like he was doing something to me physically. Like I started having chest pains to where something told me that I should stay. But just this gut feeling told me that I should leave as soon as I possibly could. So I proceeded to walk out of the store, and I turned around to look at his face, and his eyes, he had blue eyes. They were glowing. They were so bright blue. It was almost that they were on fire, like burning blue.
Yeah.
And then I kept seeing him. Like, he would follow me to work. I saw him in a movie theater, and he got really close up to me. He was sitting across from me, and I was talking on the phone. I was waiting for somebody, and then I was walking around, and then he got close to me, like probably 5 feet away, and he was smelling me, like smelling my face, and he started growling. And then I backed up. Like, I didn't want to make a scene. I just backed up and sat back down, and he disappeared. And then I lived in this really old apartment building downtown Seattle, and I would leave my window open at night. And there was no way that anybody could physically climb up the building. It was a stone building that was built back in the 1800s. And I lived on the 4th floor, and I didn't have a screen on my window, and I had these bracelets on my ankles. And there's this one night, it seemed like somebody crawled into my apartment. I had this mini fridge right by the window. Someone had kicked the refrigerator and left a dent in it. And then I woke up right away. And then my bracelet that was on my ankle was gone. And they jumped out the window. I don't know how they got out the window or even how they got up the window. Like, I was on the 4th floor, and I don't know how many, probably like at least 50 feet or more.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it was almost like if it was in a movie. And then I felt like I was attacked by whoever this was that kept following me and harassing me. I had to go to the emergency room one night. I was really, really sick. I was sweating, and I was in my bathroom looking in the mirror. I put some water on my face, and my eyes were wide open, and I felt like my heart stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And everything went black. Like, my eyes were completely open, and like, I couldn't see anything. It almost felt like I was dying in a way. Like I was having a near-death experience, and then all of a sudden it felt like something shocked my heart, and it started again. But then I was just so freaked out, I ran to the emergency room. I walked there, and like 3 o'clock in the morning. And when they took some blood, and they like took blood and urine and all that stuff, they found something in my blood, and the doctor didn't want to say anything. Like, he ran back into the room like he was panicking. And he said, "Oh, well, we checked your blood and we tried to put something in it and some type of bacteria because they didn't know what was wrong with me. I was dehydrated. I had a fever. I felt like I was nauseous. I literally looked like I was dying, or maybe I did die and come back. But
it sounds a lot like, I don't know if you heard Adele's call when she called earlier. She felt the same way. And that she was taken, so it sounds as if there are plenty of vampires that may be stalking you in Seattle. And I was reading actually just now.
I don't live there anymore. I have to move.
Well, I'm just saying that Seattle is one of the top spots actually for people who consider themselves vampires. But I'm sure with the way the darkness is in Portland, and I'm sure we have a few here too. I really thank you for your story.
It doesn't really happen that much here. Like, that stuff happened there.
I know that a lot of people have told me about situations in both Washington State and Portland. It seems to be a hive or a den for vampires. But we'll be back with more. Don't go away. I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. So, we've seen every vampire movie out there, haven't we? We've seen a lot of them. The old-fashioned vampire films from Bela Lugosi to others, Christopher Lee. And in every single vampire film, we always see, like, for example, Van Helsing. Peter Cushing played... The most memorable Van Helsing is Peter Cushing, the guy that played Tarkin in Star Wars. And in every film, we see that holy water, crosses, all those things scare away the vampire. Now, those are the old movies. Now, today, not very many things scare away a vampire. Crosses, holy water, those types of things. Vampires even can walk in the sunlight if they got the right sunscreen and the right sunglasses. So they bend the rules a little bit about exactly what a vampire can do. And so, if the rules have changed, maybe it's because those who write the fiction are well aware of the reality of how sometimes histories aren't exactly what they seem. Now, I've given you biblical history. I've given you the proof that the Nephilim are not aliens, but they're vampires. And I've given you information. I had Erica on. She said that vampires are basically the inheritors of the Nephilim, or the spirit of the Nephilim. So there you have that. And now I go even darker. It wouldn't be Ground Zero if I didn't go darker, and it wouldn't be Ground Zero if the ride didn't bump late at night, because that's exactly what we do on Ground Zero. Now, I have told you that I have been reading grimoires. that I've been reading. I found this link. I posted on my Facebook page. I'll post it again for those who need to find it. But I posted a link of a library of occult books and grimoires. They're written by sages, cardinals, friars, curas. I could go down the list of curers. People within the church, people without church, Malus Maleficarum, monks. They write these stories and grimoires about the darker times. Vampires, werewolves, not the Hollywood style and not the snicker factor, the reality of psychosis, the reality of sociopathy. Okay. So the deepest grimoire of all is the grimoire of Pope Honorius, or Honorius. He's an 8th century bishop of Rome, Pope. Now, even though we're looking at an 8th century bishop of Rome, it seems that most of the grimoire that I read was published in the 17th century. It's a product first published in 1629. It purportedly gave the sanction of the papal office to practice the ritual of magic. The grimoire of Honorius was credited to Pope Honorius III, who succeeded Pope Innocent III in 1216. Now, the grimoire of Honorius is full of Christian benedictions and formulas for the control of the fallen angels, the Nephilim, and gaining their assistance in accomplishing certain magical requests. Now, here's the deal. In the grimoire, it says that Pope Honorius III had the ability to use magic to summon vampires, to summon the fallen angels, and to gain their assistance in accomplishing certain magical requests. In other words, he had them under his power. The grimoire not only instructed priests in the arts of demonology, but virtually ordered them to learn how to conjure and control demons. And so their duties as priests was not only to summon and control demons or conjure and control demons, but to conjure and control vampires within their power. It therefore purportedly gave sanction to the papal office for priests to practice satanic magic. Now, when you read the manuscript, it appears to be a mixture of other magical grimoires. From a Christian perspective, this grimoire raises some important questions. If the church requires the powers to be able to banish or exorcise evil spirits, in reality, this means that he controls them through God's power and therefore is not able to conjure them also? So in other words, if you can summon demons, you can banish demons. So if you can summon the vampire, you can banish the vampire. And that is the power within the church. That is the secret within the church. In addition, when you look at 19th century French occultist Eliphas Levi, he was the guy that was described as horrible, wicked, and profane. He's the guy that created the Baphomet as a representation of the devil, the source of all evil, the Baphomet symbol. So does this mean, ask yourself this, does this mean that those in power, especially those who preside over governments and religious congregations, do they have the power to not only unleash demonic powers of the vampire, but are they able to unleash them and then rein them in? So the question is whether or not it is being done today, as the relationship with religion and politics play a major role in how we behave as individuals who are subject to policies invoked by those whom we choose to rule over us. Some say the mixture of the two are healthy. However, history has shown that when the people put God in the political maneuvers of government in play, we begin to see the creation of an apotheosis, and the rulers become more than rulers. They become external saviors. And as the external saviors preach their word of evil, we see an apostasy of great, great numbers falling away from the church, falling away from the word of God. Now, there are modern tales of vampirism that appear to be more than just groups of goth kids and people claiming to be blood drinkers. And this is the story that I think is the most intriguing. And in fact, it actually can be compared to what we talked about the other night about the devil knocking 3 times. In 2004, it was reported that near Sicily, there was an event that was so terrifying, residents in the area had to call in exorcists from Rome to rid the area of what they called vampires. In an area called Caronia, on the north coast, electric wires in Caronia inexplicably caught fire, even ones that were not plugged into the walls. So wires in the area caught fire, many homes caught fire in the area, and people who lived in the area reported seeing vampires roaming the streets looking for victims. Fridges, cookers, televisions, washing machines, mobile telephones, and furniture burst into flame for no apparent reason at a dozen houses in the Sicilian village of Caneto di Caronia, and it's near Messina where this took place. Authorities initially suspected that the fires were caused by overhead cables on a nearby railway line. But the outbreaks continued even after the village's electricity supply was cut off, leading some locals to blame supernatural forces. So everything was catching fire, the wires, the homes, everything, and they thought it was an electrical problem with a train wire. They killed the power in the town. The sparks flew. The fires continued. The villagers claimed, now listen to this, the villagers claimed that people that were dressed in black were going door to door, knocking and asking to inspect the wiring. However, the Italian Center for Electrotechnical Experimentation said that these so-called inspectors were not part of their group, which sparked rumors of vampires going door to door, destroying homes and property with fire. Catholic exorcists were brought in to bless the small village, and the people who were terrorized by the arrival of the strange inspectors. In 2012, it was reported that South Korea, thousands of pills filled with powdered human flesh were discovered by customs officials. It was reported that the capsules are in demand because they are viewed as being medicine that cures everything. They are marked as stamina boosters and a product of China. The pills are made from babies that either are aborted or delivered stillborn. The tiny corpses are then bought, stored in refrigerators before they are removed, and taken to clinics where they are placed in medical drying microwaves. Once the skin is tinder dry, it is pulverized and then processed into capsules along with herbs to disguise the true ingredients from health investigators and customs officers. So, when you find yourself faced with the reality that fictional vampires have become a desensitizing force to the grim reality of demonic intrusion, one has to focus on the primary reason we fear monsters in the first place. And that, of course, is the old good versus evil argument. Throughout history, evil has to be dressed up and made sexy in order for people to be tempted in participating in it. Evil has often been posted or posited in literature and even in the Bible as an overdetermined force. Evil from time infinitum has been used as a mile marker to monitor the growth of the spiritual or the spirituality in human beings. And each time we faced it and we've conquered it, we become steps closer to what we call divinity. We become more like God. We follow. If we keep conquering evil, we follow God and we do what God wants. The vampire, however, the vampire today, as a metaphor, is the creature of the night that takes shortcuts in order to obtain immortality. The vampire's life has within it a dark, counterfeit spirituality that is offered by a lesser being that no one more cares for the existence than it does its own ability to actually permeate the world with wickedness. At least that kind of vampire. We don't need a Satan anymore to tempt us into becoming a doomed and blighted pariah. We look at the secular cult of what the public have already agreed upon, and that is the notion that psychopathic bloodsuckers can run the world. We can vote for them, put them into power, and we say, oh, they're here to protect us. Well, think about this for a moment. Baphomet is now the mascot in the public square. We're looking at dualistic demons in places like, I don't know, the Middle East. To act against a perceived evil, often created by vampiric overlords, is a sin. Pointing it out is also a very, very noble thing to do. The revelation of pedophilia, attacks, predatory rape victims, people who have been involved with this, who are saying that it's coming to a head. The vampires no longer can hide in the light. The light is being shed on them. And I'm talking about the psychopathic, not the sociopathic, but the psychopathic blood drinkers that do it, and they don't give consent. It is done through coercion, and it's done to blatantly destroy the innocent. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Let's go to Robert in Montana. Hi, Robert. You're on Ground Zero. Robert, hello. You're on Ground Zero.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just calling about Elijah. Isaiah. I'm sorry, about the book of Isaiah. And you were talking earlier about the apocryphal books.
Yes, I was.
About the different apocryphal books. And I was thinking about the book of Isaiah, where it talks about the bright morning star. And where it talks about, he said, how about Satan?
You're talking about Lucifer, not Satan. Lucifer fell and became Satan. Right? You still there? Robert? You still there? Okay, Robert's not there. Let's go to Mary in Oregon. Hi, Mary. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi there, Clyde.
Hi. Oh, this is Sherry. I said Sherry, right? So Sherry in Washington. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So I have an interesting correlation with, you already kind of answered it after I was placed on hold with a call, that the Nephilim are part of the vampirisms, and I'm just also have been studying this for a while just on my own accord about all of the mutilations and that, where there's no blood left in the animals and nothing on the ground. There was one friend of mine, family had a small acreage, and they had a couple cows, and they did have an experience with one of their cows having that done to it.
Mutilated,
in La Center.
Yeah.
In 1989, and of course they called the police, and they came out and said there's nothing we can report, and left. But I was also going to bring up the fact that this is all based around sorcery, everything that has to do, even with that little town in Italy that was all the wiring was frying and everything.
Yeah.
And I also believe that.
You believe that was sorcery?
I believe in the realm of the energetic realm.
So what do you explain about the people dressed in black inspecting the homes for victims and everything? They said that they didn't recognize who they were. In fact, they had to call the priests and the exorcists from Rome to come in and exorcise the city because they felt it was being
I
attacked.
think they are the ones that initiated it with just their presence in the realm of energy, the forces, the force fields of them. And I know I also have had a book given to me about meth because I've been studying that for my defense to know, the outbreak of meth around, or methamphetamine.
Well, this has nothing to do with methamphetamine. That story in Sicily had nothing to do with methamphetamine. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to correlate it real quick with that. That the people that are on that, I have learned through studies, are always attracted to wiring. They always take the wires apart in cars.
That's because they get money out of, they get the wiring and they get money out of it. That's why they do it.
Because I thought maybe at the metabolic level, and even unbeknown to their psyche, that they're drawn to.
They do it to get money. They do it to get money. They go to a place that buys metal, whether it be copper wiring or whatever. I mean, my father used to do it. He used to work for the county, and he'd come in and he'd bring all this metal stuff that he'd find, and he'd bring it in and he'd make money out of it. And that's exactly why they do it, is because they need to fill their habit. And the only way they fill their habit is to find wires, in fact, they've been known to steal girders from bridges and take them in for money so they can get money for their meth habit.
Okay, yeah, I do realize that part of it. But it almost seems like there's a metabolic or some kind of a connection that's within their blood that's craving energy or electricity also, aside from stealing wire or copper to turn it in for money.
I've never heard that, actually.
Yeah,
never heard
it's
that.
like this energy force just sucks them to where there's energy.
So you're telling me that people on meth are more susceptible to being taken into places where there's energy, or they like to get around energy fields?
Yes, I think there's vampirism involved in... Okay, there's different types of vampirism. This one would be the vampiring of people's souls or the energy off of them. You know, just sucking the life forms out of people all around them.
So they're looking for life force energies to steal from people, and that's what meth heads do, is what you're saying.
It generates them to crave it. So that,
some people call meth heads. Some people call meth heads the modern zombie, and when they tweak in the street, I would kind of agree. Thank you so much, Sherry, for that call. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. A couple lines open if you want to get in at the last minute. We're getting ready. Coming in the final stretch of the show, so we'd love to hear from you. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Back with more Ground Zero. Don't go away. I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. Numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Conspiracy theorists have been saying that they have proof, or they've said many times, that something of occult nature takes place everywhere, and that the cult is taking over. No hoaxes, no real reason not to doubt that bloodletting is happening, that bloodletting is being covered up, whether it be murder within the realms of politics, or whether it be war, or diseases, or things that can be actually, used against death of the innocent. And what vampire tale wouldn't be complete without talking about Elizabeth Bathory? She was born in Transylvania in 1560. She was born into a privileged family whose members included knights, cardinals, and kings. She spent her days living a life of privilege surrounded by great wealth, always being taught the ways of the aristocrats. However, Elizabeth also had some other unique instruction. She was instructed in the dark arts by her uncle, an alchemist, and was introduced to witchcraft and sadomasochism by one of her aunts. Rumors about the Countess's brutal nature began circulating in 1602. Countess Bathory passed the time and drudgery of ruling over 17 villages. She would torture her servants for her own amusement. Not satisfied with the occasional beatings, Bathory quickly graduated to hot pokers, needles under fingernails, and stitching mouths shut. She also had a fondness for covering villagers in honey and watching as insects and animals would devour them. Some of Bathory's other documented wickedness included forcing victims to cook and eat their own flesh, forcing them to stand in buckets of ice outside until they froze to death, starvation, poisoning, and on one occasion, having a gypsy man sewn up into the belly of a dead horse. And these were just a small sample of what she was accused of doing at her trial. After her death, it was revealed that she enjoyed bathing in the blood of her victims as well as drinking it in order to maintain her youth. Now that, I think, tops them all, right? I mean, look. Bloodletting and blood drinking and this has been going on now, and it's been stoking the fires of some 6,000-year-old secret regarding 5% of the elites, the royal families, world rulers. Bloodlines and ritual blood drinking continues today, and that youthful blood keeps them living longer. Isn't it a coincidence that the Queen Mother lived to be 101? Queen Elizabeth II, she just had, she's now living, is she like over 90 now, isn't she? And Prince Philip, 95. It's rumored for some time the royals drink the blood of the young to stay alive. They get transfusions in order to stay. By 2011, there were witnesses from the First Nations schools in Canada. They said that nearly 500,000 graves were found in the schools there, and that even the Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth would show up. They would pick First Nation children, dress them nicely, take them away, and they were never seen again. This is according to a Kamloops, British Columbia school. They selected 10 children, according to what I was reading. They had the children removed from the school. None of the children were ever seen again. The group that disappeared were 7 boys and 3 girls, and aged from 6 to 14 years of age. In the book Mummies, Cannibals, and Vampires by Richard Sugg, it is reported that in medieval Europe, medicinal cannibalism was practiced by people of royal stature, and it is believed that ritual cannibalism may still be going on behind the scenes with the royals and many of the royal elite of the world. And this has been going on since the time of King James. So, who was the guy that wanted the Bible to be given to him? King James, right? Is that right? And for all we know, King James was a vampire. Let's go to Mary in Oregon. Hi, Mary. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. First-time caller, long-time listener. What I want to say is you're 100% correct. And when I was living in Malala,
okay,
which, I never had a Bible. I never knew about God. I never wasn't taught anything like that in my family. They're from Europe. And, I was living in a townhouse, and a couple of townhouses down from me, there was a man and a woman. They would frequent on Main Street at this one particular bar, and they would put some type of drugs into people's drinks, and then help escort the person, one at a time, to their townhouse, and would shave them clean, and would either roll them for their money or they would laugh about it. They'd say that they eat people. I thought they were crazy because I never really understood things like that. It was stupid. Wow. And then my boyfriend at that time, who came from Michigan and was friends with these people, he would drink my blood.
He would drink your blood?
Sound sleeper. Pardon?
He would drink your blood?
Yes, my blood. I was a very sound sleeper. When I was living in California, I wouldn't even wake up with earthquakes. So I'd be a sound sleeper, and he'd be cutting at my fingers and sucking my fingers, or cutting at my wrists and sucking my blood out. Or on his really nasty, horrible, would be wanting to eat monthly eggs.
My God, out of you?
Yeah. I just couldn't believe it. I didn't know.
What part of Runaway? What part of Runaway did you finally realize? Run away, get away.
When I spoke to somebody and I told them, I said, "This is happening to me. What do I do?" They said, I spoke to the police. I said, "You need to leave. Take the children and leave." So I gave them the boat and I gave them the Willie Jeep, and I said, "I'm leaving. I'm getting out of here. Goodbye." And I left to the other part of Oregon, far away, and changed my name so nobody could find me or the children, and it was very frightening. And
you're saying that
police officers do this. The police officer in New York, he got busted for getting women into his house. He was going to make a cookbook on how to cook women, how to cook humans. It's happening, and it's getting worse, Clyde. I'm serious when I say this.
No, oh my God. So where did this happen to you? New York?
Okay. When I was just speaking about the New York police officer.
Right, okay. So where did this other incident happen to you?
Malala, Oregon.
Malala, yeah, okay. Malala, Oregon.
Yeah. You know where Malala is? You're right there in Portland.
Yeah, I do. And so this guy, what's with him now? What is he doing now?
I don't know. When I left back in the 90s, I left. And I couldn't believe he would cut my finger up, suck my blood out while I was sleeping, cut my wrists up, eat my...
Yeah, I know.
Private thingy during my menstrual.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Disgusting, and the people, there's townhouses, there was 2 stories. Townhouses would get people from the bar, put something in their drink, escort them to their townhouse,
right?
Shave off their hair,
and
either roll them or And I couldn't believe it because like I said, I never read.
And so this guy never got thrown in jail for this. They never found him.
I didn't know.
You didn't know what?
Get the heck out of there.
So you got the hell out of there. But what happened to this guy? I mean, if this guy's still out there, he's like a vampire. He's going out and he's sucking the fingers of people, drinking their ya-ya drinks or whatever. You know, it's like blood in the cup. 2 girls and a guy's in a eggs, different kind of eggs. I understand what you're saying. This guy's sick. This guy's why didn't the police grab him and throw him in jail?
What proof do they have? They weren't there when it was happening, were they?
But no, you can't you file a report? Couldn't you file a report? Hearsay.
There's no documentation. There's no proof.
He took your eggs.
Not in my bedroom when it's happening.
He sucked your
Thank
fingers.
God he didn't do it to the children.
He drank your wrist blood.
Who knows what?
And the other blood. He drank the wrist blood and the other blood too. I mean, come on. I mean, didn't you show the cuts? Didn't you show the what? What'd you say?
The guy was a vampire.
Obviously.
The sun would even bother him.
Obviously.
And he was a vampire. He liked DNA, blood. Okay. He'd also brag about how humans taste like pigs, better than pigs. Okay. And it's true. It's really happening.
And so this guy is still hanging out in Malala, Oregon, right?
I don't know where he's at. When I left, I gave him the boat. I gave him the willy. And I said, take him. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Don't follow me. Don't bother the children. If you do, I will call the police and have you arrested. Do not contact me. I changed my name. I moved far, far away. I live far away from Portland. Far away. Far away.
Wow. This is the best story, top story ever of the whole night. I'm completely terrified by this story.
So, the moral of the story is you really don't know.
No.
It could be your next door neighbor.
Yeah.
It was mine. They would go to the bars and pick up on people, putting things into their drinks to knock them out.
They'd use roofies, right? They'd give them roofies.
I don't know what it was called.
That's got to be the roof. It's Rohypnol. They gave them
Escort them to
Rohypnol.
their townhouse.
And then they'd escort people to the townhouse, and then they'd shave their hair, shave their heads.
Shave all their hair.
Drink their blood.
Mm-hmm.
My God.
And laugh about it. Because they thought it was so funny. But then you know what happened to them? Their daughter was kidnapped. She was contacting somebody at the Malala Library or something, or maybe out of their townhouse computer. I don't know. But she contacted somebody out of state. The guy picked her up at the Malala Library.
Yeah.
Then she was on the most wanted list, or he was. I don't know. They were searching for FBI and police. They finally did find her.
This is the first call I've ever had in the history of my show where I have a bad taste in my mouth. I'm kind of like trying to find the taste, and I don't.
You really have to be careful.
I
Because
do.
you say you ride the bus or the train or whatever. You don't know.
I know.
Okay.
You don't.
And they could follow you.
Yeah.
They could follow your wife Jane. They can follow your son. They can follow you.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I don't know. Okay?
All right. You've done it. You've scared me.
All right. You take care.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, it's true.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Jesus. They can follow you. Be careful. They're behind you. Yeah, I know. They can follow me. Oh, my God. Like I said, I think I want some strawberry ice cream. That would take this bad taste out of my mouth right now. Oh, my God. That poor woman. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL. With Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
By the way, what she was describing as far as the, drinking of the, it's called the Starfire ceremony. It's basically drinking the gold of the gods is what they call it. And it's certainly something that is a vampire type thing. Let's go to Jared in Oregon. Hi, Jared. You're on Ground Zero.
Hey, how are you doing? I never called in before, and I never listened to your show. I was going to pick my buddy up a pack of smokes, and long story short is
you got into a great show tonight, didn't you, man? You just really did.
Hey, there's a lot of 5150s out there, I'll tell you that right now.
Points, man, points. Go ahead.
Long story short is I was in the United States Army. I was a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, high-yield explosive specialist. Say that 10 times fast.
That's hard to say, yes, exactly. Yeah.
But anyways, a lot of people are talking about like emotional vampires and stuff like that, like people from Seattle. And you got a lot of 5150s. And then like the last lady, she was talking about a cult in the 90s, yet she couldn't even name the missing gal. Now, with that being said, the one thing that one gal, it seems like she's got a problem with bones and stuff like that, and people moving them and playing with them, that kind of thing. Well, and she was talking about plagues and all that.
We're talking about what's going on, the dancing with the bones that happens in Madagascar. That's why the plague is spreading, because they pull the bodies out of the graves and dance with them.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. What they don't understand is that's what brings a lot of plagues back.
They don't understand. That's why somebody needs to go in and say, hey, don't dance with the dead. It brings disease. They just do it.
How do you think we had some of these other things come back and came back in force? I mean, think about it.
Because we've had bad things happen with the dead, like necrophilia and necromancy, and yeah, I mean, come on.
I know.
Isn't having sex with the dead? They call it the weaker sex, and that's what they joke about. They say it's the weaker sex. So they have sex with the dead.
Nothing wrong with cracking open a cold one.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Are you going to the gala? We're ending the show really badly tonight. But that's okay, because this is your first time. So I think that I will give you a pass. I will give you a pass, dude. I'll give you a pass.
I thought you would laugh at that.
I am laughing at it. Literally, it's right here, right with the throw up that's about to come out with it.
But no, it was an interesting show. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I will probably listen to you guys again tomorrow.
I hope so. I hope so. Man. Guess what we're doing tomorrow? We're going to contact voodoo dolls and see if they'll speak to us. You want to listen to that?
They call it voodoo, by the way.
What do they call it?
Voodoo.
Voodoo. What'd I say? Voodoo?
No, you said voodoo.
Oh, voodoo. Voodoo. It's the voodoo you do. It's voodoo.
They call it voodoo.
It's voodoo.
FM News 101 KXL.